Joseph, am I in the way? No. I usually am, so that's different. Oh, okay.
Well, that's from my ears, yeah, I know. Yeah, that's cool.
Welcome, I haven't seen you welcome.
All right, thanks.
We got an hour. Grab some dinner.
It says like weeds and sidewalks.
All right, I think the announcements are finally wrapping up, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. All right, we'll call to order the regular meeting of the Lawrence Board of Trustees for Monday, June 4th. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Sullivan? Present. Mayor Pro Tem Drysdale?
Present.
Trustee Farrell?
Present.
Trustee Carabas?
Present.
Trustee Wong?
Present.
Trustee Miller?
Present.
And Trustee Brown? Hey.
All right,
Neither
please
one
stand
over
for the
here.
Right.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
With liberty and justice for all.
Let's take a brief reflective moment of silence, please. Thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Always on the way back, I can never remember when. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Do we now call for the votes? And the agenda is approved 6-0. All right, I'll turn it over to Sergeant Chris.
All right, good evening. Hopefully I can talk over the lady talking outside. Last busy couple weeks here in town. Lots of calls going on, but everything's good. Outdoor games this weekend was really well. A little bit of change of venue with the Bond Park extension and all that, so we adapted to that and it turned out really well. There was only, I had one parking complaint the whole time, and it was not a parking issue. It was just someone that didn't quite understand, so it wasn't even a true parking complaint. We did not receive any complaints or anything like that for any problems over the weekend, so I think it's an A+ weekend this past weekend. The parks were good. Laverne Johnson Park was a far cry from the weekend before. They were very happy over there. Everybody was doing good. So really just no complaints at all. I have noticed a tick down in traffic with the opening of 34. It doesn't seem like the weekend traffic is as bad. What I've been noticing is around that 11 o'clock hour in the morning till about maybe 12:30, it tends to just jam up a little down to the dairy bar, but again, everybody's moving, but there's just that little bit of backflow and then it just clears out. So that's been a big help for everything. We're just about at the halfway point, so this week I'm gonna focus on getting our numbers updated for the budget, just to see where we're at. I know that there was talk, and I think we're gonna go ahead and realign some of the extra duty park hours to extend them from 9 in the morning till 9 at night, after some meetings that we had and some issues that go on, after 6 a.m. So we'll look at the budget and see where we're at, make sure we're on track, and maybe move that also from a 6-hour block to an 8-hour block, just to keep a higher presence in the parks. That's all I have.
Any questions? Sorry, go ahead.
Is there any update on the person that's nominated?
So, it's the coroner's case at this point, so I'm kind of waiting on an official press release on that, but we did identify the gentleman, being a 33-year-old non-resident of Lyons. He was from Fort Collins. About the only thing I can really say is that there's nothing suspicious, no foul play or anything like that. More than likely, it was a medical condition that caused him to be in the river. So without the coroner's official report, I can't really say anything more than that. I hope that helps. So big kudos to the town staff. There was a couple gentlemen there that helped us get him out, and I know that's always very traumatic to people that don't see that every day. So definitely a big thanks to them, and we had some advocates come up for everybody that we were so not a good day that day. So,
Thank you.
You bet.
Any questions?
Never mind, not right now.
Well, it was nice, I'm glad to hear that there weren't any parking or complaints. I mean, knowing we had lots more cars in the streets, it seemed to go pretty well. I was around quite a bit, and I also did a loop through Laverne Johnson Park, both days, Saturday and Sunday, and everything looked, really, people just enjoying the park, really. But I did have, I think, and this is really maybe more for town staff, there was some confusion about whether the sheriff was allowed to write tickets on Saturday in the parks. Yeah.
So I did hear that, and
Okay.
that really came from a completely confused and unreliable source.
Okay.
Okay? Just sorry to say, because I did hear that, and obviously that's not the case. So my staff has been advised by me that, everything in the parks is what we're gonna charge. Those rules that are handed out are the rules that we're gonna enforce. And the top three that we continually deal with are the parking, the dogs off leash, and the gas grill issues, alcohol in the parks. So, basically I've told everybody, you know what, we're done with warnings. My officers still have that discretion. I always give that to them, because there are always situations where a warning is appropriate, but basically that threshold is a little bit lower now, because we just need to stay on top of it, and those things won't be allowed. So that's what we're enforcing. We wrote one ticket, I think, for a dog off leash in the park that resulted in a dog fight, I think. Other than that, there was no other issues. So all of my guys are very aware that we're enforcing the rules in the park.
Okay, well, I think that, I ran into an officer at the time, and I was like, is there, do you guys have, I don't know, I said I can follow up with staff if I need to, if you're not clear. And they seemed perfectly, gave the answer you just gave, so I don't think there was an issue, but I do think it just made me question, how many tickets on average would you say they write on a typical weekend?
Not many, not many. 3, 5, maybe, tops. And as long as we stay on it, because, you know, I don't wanna go in there either and just be that, you know, I don't wanna be so heavy-handed that nobody wants to come and enjoy the park. There's always a rhyme and reason, and sometimes people just don't see a sign, you know. Usually it's, hey, I need you to move your car, okay, sorry, I didn't realize you parked there. That's what we're looking for, just to gain compliance with everything else, and that's why this weekend, we were probably well overstaffed in the parks. I was up here doing the festival, but I was also in the parks. I had my regular parks guy in the parks. We had 2 extra district cars, and they stayed in the parks almost the whole time, along with our animal control gals. So we really wanted to just make sure that this weekend was smooth. I talked to the park host at 3 o'clock on Saturday, and they were just tickled pink. They just felt that it was going really well, and they were enjoying the day. You know, far different from the Memorial Day weekend, which was just, it's a different crowd and a different atmosphere. So, so yeah, it went well, and that's what my guys are instructed to do.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to staff reports.
We'll be starting with the flood recovery update. Oh,
Thank you, Victoria. My name is Richard Markovich. Thank you, Mayor Sullivan and the board. Flood recovery update. I wanted to talk about Public Works building the site development first. So we have a site package that is out to bid, and this is filling in the old water treatment storage ponds and creating a rough graded site. It also would finish the area that will allow, as will be the future yard for the Public Works building, so that we can put connexes and equipment and store materials out there. And start using that area. We should have a contract for that construction to the board, I believe June 18th. And our worst case would be the meeting after that. And probably need, end construction beginning of August, mid-August.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
So I noticed you put in here about the greens, hoping to reconfigure, relocate that site. Do we need to just kind of put that to rest and give them a definitive response? If they don't keep thinking it's an open possibility, I mean, if we're thinking that we're just too far along to go back and try to re-study and reconfigure and figure out how to downsize. I mean, just the way that it's worded in here, it feels like it's still this kind of, well, this is what they want. Are we considering it or are we not considering it? If staff feels like it's something to consider, feel free to say so, but I also feel like, I'm also reading in here that that's maybe alarming to the.
I was hoping maybe under the housing update, that you could give us a little more direction, but if you want to do it, if you want to have that discussion, or if you want a separate general business item, that's fine. But we do need it to be able to finalize the purchase and sale agreement.
I'm, you know, whatever you're most comfortable with, but it feels like we need to have the discussion one way or the other. If you're not prepared to have it tonight, we can schedule it for the next meeting, or if you feel like, you know, you kind of know where we're going, is there really anything to talk about? You know.
Yeah, I would love to have it tonight if we could. I don't know if we're totally prepared, but it's really the board meeting to have that discussion, and you can answer questions. I believe,
and we have a housing update on the agenda, so
Yep.
really anything pertaining to housing is fair game, so it's good to have it there.
That's great.
Okay.
so that one.
And then the Public Works buildings, there are 2 buildings that will be on site. One is FEMA funded, that is a replacement of the storage building that we used to have in the town. We're looking at fast tracking that project to try to get it built as soon as possible. It's a very simple structure, and it would be advantageous to bid it separately from the second building, which is funded with CDBGR funding. And that building has finishes inside and plumbing and mechanical and all this, which will take a lot longer. So we feel like there's some advantages in keeping those projects separate. We may end up with the same contractor, may not, but in order to get something that's functional out there, we'd like to fast track the project, so we're looking at that. And Second Bridge, we are close to finishing the 30% design. The bridge, the water analysis has been done. We've looked at access for the residences off the alley and different options that might accommodate that. And we would like to have the board consider those options at some point in the near future. So we'd like to get some direction from the board on how to handle that, how the board can handle that process. Because we need to notify the neighbors of what the options are and what the decisions are. Bone Park Phase 2, we have a meeting this Wednesday with the contractor and the designer to talk about how to move forward with them. And so there's several contractual issues. We've had consultation with council about our options, and so we really need their help to price out what's existing in different various scenarios for moving forward. We would like to move forward with the pieces that do not involve the excavation and the historic cultural survey. So we've requested that of FEMA, and we haven't had an answer yet. So that's the Lions Valley River Park. Larmont we've asked them to provide funding for the outfall. They've come up with $114,000. That's not adequate to do the project. They've suggested that we go back to CDPHE and ask for additional funds. We're considering that option, and we'll see where we go from there. And then moving to the next page, Northwest Utilities, that's the Apple Valley water line relocation. And we had good news that FEMA had decided to allow us to go down the road and cut across the properties where we requested from FEMA HMGP whether we can go through the buyout with the water line. We're not sure if that's going to be possible or not. That seems to be our only option right now. We may have to go back into the river if that doesn't work out. And we're still trying to work with Longmont on that one too. They've actually have made some concessions to move their design just a little bit so we can fit our line in without interrupting the gas line, which was significant. Eastern Quarter Utilities Development, we're hiring an engineer, and so we issued that RFP last week. So we're on our way to hiring that engineer to do the work necessary to analyze the steps forward with the plant and the lift stations. Pedestrian bridge at 3rd and Park, we put a request in FEMA to use one of the properties on HMG, I believe it's HMG buyout property. So we're waiting to hear on that one.
I have a question on the funding note on that. I guess I was thinking that was part of our pilot, and so this is kind of the first I remember seeing that there's additional funding needed for this project.
This is part of the TAP, and we could include it into the parks projects. However, I believe we've used up the majority of that funding, or we're not sure that we can fund this with that funding at this point. And so the Bond Park Phase 2 kind of has something to do with that. We're not sure, that may cost us a little extra money. And, so we're planning on doing a complete analysis of the budget again, so we know where we stand as soon as we can.
Yeah,
I can add to that.
Yeah, I would like you to.
The insurance company will pay for the bridge.
Right.
It's really the abutments and getting approval from, the FEMA and allowing that as a structure on a buyout property.
Right, I understand that. I think though that I'm kind of going back to the discussions when we planned out Bone Park Phase 2. I think we were very clear about that we wanted to make sure there was still the river park and the pedestrian bridge built into the room, built into that. So if that's changing, I think that is a conversation we should have, because I think that my understanding was that this was funded as part of the project. So if that's not the case, I think we need to come back and look at the whole parks budget again before Bone Park Phase 2 gets too much weight.
Thank you so much. With the South St. Vrain Creek restoration, the plantings are doing fairly well out there. We've been working with the contractor to make sure it's irrigated. We did have some weeds come up that are actually called penncress, and they are not a noxious weed. We contacted the designer on the project, and they analyzed it, and they said this is penncress. It's actually stabilizing the soil, and it's not a threat. There were some residents that thought it was rory cress, which is a noxious weed and very kind of threatening. So this is the good cress, and so we don't have an issue there. So we were going to spray for those weeds, and we decided not to, because the consultant has advised us to leave them there to help stabilize the soil. And they'll come up one season, and then the other plants will take over. On our elevations project, we pretty much terminated that project out. However, I'm still trying to come up with ideas and maybe a way to revitalize it. I don't want to get anyone hopes up. We're going to talk with Boulder Collaborative one more time and just before we finalize this. I need to write a letter soon to finalize it, and before I do that, I want to make one last effort. And then we wanted to report on the Bone Park Phase 2 Scable Plaza tonight also. I think the bullet points are self-explanatory. However, we need resolution to the Bone Park Phase 2 issues with the contractor. This subcontractor, Team Kane, works for Walsh Construction, the contractor, and they're a design builder. So if for some reason we're not able to move forward with Walsh, we're going to end up getting a new designer. There's plenty of time, I think, to get public input on the Scable Plaza, and so we just don't have a clear direction on how to move forward at the moment. But we will.
Any questions on the project? Trustee Taylor, did you have something?
Question. For the record, I have a 14-year-old lobbyist in my house. So I don't think I have to recuse myself at this point, but I guess what I would be curious to know about is some of the questions that now that we have a little bit of perhaps some time, what are some opportunities that, could we approach CMEX to perhaps be a part of donating cement for their name to be on the project? Do we have a CMEX liaison that works for us in a commission or anything between town and them as a company? That perhaps that's something that's possible. And then exploring another kind of perhaps chance to write a grant. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is it BOCO that is the lottery source for some things like this? And so I was wondering if those are two opportunities, and I do know this 14-year-old who would be happy to participate in those two particular items, if having some young person be a representative.
Well, CMEX, we do have a strong relationship. We had a strong relationship with the plant manager, but he has very, very recently just been transferred or is no longer at our location. So I need to go out and introduce myself to the new plant manager and start developing that. Again, I know that the previous manager was open to considering some of that as a naming right potentially. The GOCO grant, the issue with that in the past has been that the cycle is only open in October. And then it doesn't get awarded till the following, like March. So it would put us back another whole year if we want to pursue that for this. We've somewhat been keeping that in our back pocket for the ball fields if we need it.
Okay.
Any other questions? No?
Just a quick question on the parking and paving at the wastewater treatment plant. I think, when's that, I know an RFP went out in April. What's the date for construction?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. Devalco Construction is the low bidder on that. I'm not clear what the construction bid was. I wasn't able to attend the bids. That just happened last week. But we are looking at trying to put together a contract with them now as soon as they have their bonding ready. I believe we can try. Well, we'll bring that as soon as we can to the board. I'm just not sure if we'll make the next meeting. I think it will definitely be the meeting after that.
Do you have an idea of when the construction would begin? When we get to that phase?
You know, we normally have the contractor give us a schedule, but I think it's a month and a half schedule or 2 months. Joe?
Yeah, it's 2 months and they'll start a week or two after the award.
Right,
So
July.
August.
Yeah, sometime in August it will be complete.
Okay. And then I'm asking because of the
You have a contract in front of us tonight.
Oh, you do? Oh, so you're ahead of me.
So, yeah, no, it's, those, yeah, that was, I was gonna bring it up then, but we
Okay,
can do
yeah, we
it.
can
But
come back.
Oh,
I
you
think
have
we
tonight.
need to
Okay.
consider parking if we're gonna
Yeah.
be offering it for parking for special events during the time when we're thinking it's gonna be under construction.
It's not paving the entire parking lot. It's only paving a driveway up to the wastewater plant.
Yeah, this is.
Either way, I mean, if
So, yeah,
there's
it's not-
construction
it's-
going on when we're trying to facilitate.
Oh, no,
Parking at the
we'll be
site.
fine, we'll work around those
Okay.
together.
Okay.
So the project in front of you has to do with paving, this actually, I think it's FEMA, is paying for a driveway up to the wastewater treatment plant, so that if there are, any types of, how do you say this, any kind of, spillage from trucks and stuff, it's not going directly into the ground. Yeah, and then it's a fence around the wastewater treatment plant, lighting and electric. The recycling center, is scheduled for the concrete, it was supposed to go in actually, last Friday, but we asked them to hold off till after the games. So, that should be this week.
So my apologies, the project manager went on vacation, remember last week, so I didn't get a chance to talk to her before she left, so I didn't know if she had finished the contract.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? I just had one question on the deed restricted by properties number 10. Have we heard anything on these agreements? And that's kind of part one. I'm assuming that's the one where the landowners want to lease the property, correct?
Yes. Well, we've submitted that to HMGP for review, and they have received it, and they haven't provided any comments just yet.
How long has that been out for their review?
Not long.
No,
Just
okay.
went last week. I
It
think.
just seems like we worked on that so long ago.
Over a year
We
ago.
did. So,
Yeah.
just, yeah. okay.
Unfortunately, Paul was out of the office for a little while, and I wanted to wait till he got back, because he handled most of that. And so when he got back, I got with him and then we sent it off.
Okay, all right. I just wasn't sure if it was in FEMA's court or where it was.
We are getting some really unusual kind of mixed messages about it.
Well, it was more a little bit of confusion when the monitoring team came in.
Yeah.
They didn't know much about the project, and so they were a little surprised at what we were doing.
They just didn't think anything. So, I don't know, so it's gonna be interesting to see where that one goes.
And then, it just maybe somewhat related, but transfer of the Martin parcel, is that moved forward at all? Have we started, since we're gonna be meeting with we have a meeting with the county coming up, I just thought it might be an opportunity to kind of, maybe it just needs to go on the list so that we're kind of at least staying on top of that, because I think we need to understand that process. And that's such an important parcel.
This will be a first for the state as well,
Yeah.
so just so you know.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much.
Next.
Joe is, going to give a response to the ecology board regarding the request for access to genetics.
Yeah, this will be pretty short. We just have to parse out the data that we can leave public versus what I have to keep private. So once we get the data parsed out, we've worked with the person who's gonna do this work. She has all her own software, so she'll be able to do it. And then I intend to bring it back to the board for review before we put it on the website. So, whatever they prepare, it'll be, they'll work with the ecology board, then I'll bring it back to you before we post it anywhere. And make it public. Pretty simple process, actually.
Do we need any agreements or anything with anyone?
Not that I
Sharing
know.
and data
It's all public data.
and- Okay.
We didn't even create it, we just conglomerated it from different public sources.
Okay. Good. Great. So it sounds like it's a yes, move ahead, but we need a review process.
Yes,
The right way to sign.
that's okay with the board.
Sure.
Sounds good to us. All right. The next item.
He was in his office this evening.
Yeah, but you can
We can do that.
Yeah, while we're waiting for Paul, I have an update, a staff update on, the liquor license that you heard at your last meeting, from Bella La Crema.
Well, coming up June 18th.
But we talked to him about it once, yeah. This is the new business that is going to be located at 405 Main Street, where the Button Rock Bakery used to be. If you recall, they are proposing to have a business that is organic, grass-fed, cultured butters that are infused with many different flavors, sold by the ounce or the pound, as well as breads, mixes, things like that. You will be hearing their liquor license application at the next meeting, but we do want to let the board know that they are asking for guidance, and we have it now, on whether or not they can offer one of their butters to be a CBD infused butter at their meals. So in consultation with the state Marijuana Enforcement Division, there are currently no state requirements for CBD infused products that are derived from hemp, which she's requesting, and contain less than 0.3% of THC. So at this point, there's no regulation, but this would be in a commercial downtown district, which does not allow the selling of products. So we, as a staff, are feeling it's okay to move forward, but we want to make the board aware of this. And if you don't want that to be part of her liquor license, or want more information on this or something before you have that hearing, we're happy to do that. So it's not even a marijuana product, it's a hemp product. So to me, I don't think it's something we regulate. So unless there is anything else, we just didn't want her to go through the time and trouble of the cost of getting a new license, if that was gonna be a problem for you.
Trustee Farrell, go ahead.
Is she saying that she won't pursue a liquor license if she can't have this one particular product?
No, no. But I think she just won't start ordering and working on the product if that's gonna be a problem for you.
But I think if she meets the criteria to have a liquor license, and there's nothing that would prohibit her from doing that, I don't see that there should be an issue.
Okay, thank you. And then, a couple other staff updates that I can give you while we're waiting is, we had our annual, audit of our, from CIRSA, our insurance carrier, risk management provider, on our workers' comp and our workers' comp claims for 2017. In the year of 2017, we had 4 workers' comp claims that incurred costs of about $31,000. Almost 2/3 of that is just one claim that came from a vehicle accident. And in regard to property casualty claims, we had a total of $457 of claims due to a water pipe shut off that did not work properly and damaged some property. So we had a good audit. They give us points every year, and this year we went up in points in both the workers' comp category and the property claims categories. They do want us to work on some areas for next year. One is working on implementing a data security, data breach, and server security tactics that would improve our chance of claims there. They want any employee who drive municipal vehicles to attend defensive driver training, conduct trench and excavating safety training, and conduct our confined space entry safety training, because we have so many different employees. So those are the things we'll be working on from our risk carriers perspective this next year. Also, the last 2 weeks, we had streets paved. I think it was pretty successful. I didn't hear very many people who didn't move their cars, so that's a good thing. Also, we had some asphalt laid on several critical areas, and hopefully people have been noticing that for you. We have pretty much expended what we have budgeted for that so far this year, so unless we start to see some extra cost savings that we want to apply to this area, that's probably all we'll be doing, except for emergencies situations. And we have started our grease trap inspections and meeting with the business owners and working with them, and we will be returning in 2 weeks to see how they're doing getting those improved. We also met with the distillery and looking at implementing some means of the side streaming some of their byproducts and putting those to another use on some farms in the area. So, all's good. Hi. There is an item on here about a referral to the Planning Commission for zoning code modifications. Are you familiar with it?
I am not.
Okay.
So I asked for this just to be put on here as a staff report. This is from the motion that was made at the ADU application at our first meeting of this board. And since it came out of a different topic that wasn't really noticed publicly, I thought it would be good to at least put it here somewhere and revisit. And I think when we had the discussion, we weren't totally clear what the action might have to be to accomplish the goal. So now there's more known about what it would take to accomplish that goal, and it's actually a change to zoning code, not anything to do with the ADU ordinance. It's kind of hard to follow the discussion at the time because it had nothing to do with the application, which is why I felt like we needed a separate agenda item, at least under staff reports. We've already made the motion to move it forward, but I thought let's just kind of revisit it so we can go on the record about what we're actually moving forward with, because it wasn't clear at the time that we were actually moving forward with zoning code change. So do you want to describe what the change is?
Sure. The suggested modification for was to, in the residential code, zoning code, modify the conditional use section to accessory structures with sewer and water go through, no, with sewer, hence water, to go through conditional use application. Because, well, the issue that we're having is, and that we've had is, our code allows for everything except for essentially the kitchen sink, if you will, to be developed as an ADU. And so a lot of times people are developing these accessory units and then coming in and applying for a conditional use application for an ADU. The conditional use application for the ADU was meant to allow design review. And if you're building everything up to the point where you have it already developed, you won't allow for that design review of an accessory dwelling unit. So by requiring those that are going through this process and essentially putting in something as similar to an ADU to go through that process, we would add more transparency to that process and maybe encourage them to make the decision earlier.
Okay, so basically, this has to go to PCDC, because we're actually, this would be a change to zoning code, so it's not something we can do without going through that step.
Correct.
Just out of curiosity, were you able to pull any numbers for how many of these you have seen go through the process in the recent, last year or so?
Yes, and I don't have them right in front of me, but I think it was somewhere on the order of 5. Not in the last year, but in the last few years.
5 of the last several years?
Yes. But there have been several in the past.
So,
probably on the order of 20.
Over how long of a period of time?
I would have to go back and look at the numbers. I'm trying to pull them up now.
That's okay. Trustee Yuan.
I just want to make sure I understand. So it would require any accessory building, basically, or application for any accessory building to go through a design review
No.
process? I don't know if I'm understanding that.
With an accessory building with sewer and water.
Okay, so essentially, any accessory dwelling with sewer and water would have to go through the same review process as an ADU would have to go through, is the
Yes. So
gist of it.
any building that has essentially living space,
Mhm. Okay, gotcha.
Potential living space.
Potential living space, excuse me. It could be somebody's workshop with a bathroom.
Mhm.
Okay, so I just wanted you to hear it so that you would understand what we would be referring. So anybody have anything changed with that explanation? I guess
It'll come back to
it would come back to us after PCDC takes a look at the code. Okay, all right. All right,
Sorry.
anything else for staff reports?
No, not unless you have any other questions or.
All right, we'll go and move on to audience business. This is the portion of the meeting where the audience is welcome to approach the board on items that are not on the agenda tonight as a public hearing. We do have one item that's open for public comment. That's resolution 2018-46, which is approving an amendment to the amendable letter of understanding for Planet Bluegrass Farm property. So if you're here to speak to that item, please wait until the comment period opens for that. Otherwise, you're welcome to come and approach the board on any other topic. Give your name and address for the record, and each person will have 4 minutes.
Hi, I'm Laverne Johnson, 306 Evans Lyons. And I noticed where, first, the museum is open, be open every day through September 29th, and we invite you all to come. And we've been doing some painting and have some new displays and going to have some programs. So keep your eye on that. So since the flood, we've been trying to find a way to get the paving up there that was ruined by the flood paved. And I contacted Victoria and to see if one of those companies wouldn't come and do it for free. And I haven't heard from her. And I see where they're going to have more paving like 4th and Evans. So I want to get my nibs in.
They did that, that's like her, oh, near your house, you mean?
I'm at, no, the museum driveway.
No, the one that's still coming up.
Still coming up?
No, I'll talk to you about that one. Okay.
Well, anyhow, we need the paving of the museum driveway done before all this flood thing because it undermined the paving. And I feel like FEMA maybe would pay for it and before when we paved it, Western Paving did it. And then it got washed out. We have a sign that got broke during our restoration of that sign. And so if we can get someone to do us this big favor, why then we put their name on the sign too. So we want to ask about the skateboard. And I ask if they're going to go ahead and have a public meeting. I see they talked about this subcontractor, but it was my idea that, and I wasn't able to go to the Parks and Rec meeting last time, but that some of the people were wanting to discuss it, so.
After we have other issues to figure out first. They're going to do it, just
They are, okay. All right, and next, I want to tell Bill that we start our square dances on Saturdays on June 16th. We'll have a big crowd, and I don't want you picking them up. Because they're not going to be drunk.
I thought you was gonna ask me to square dance, and that would not be good.
No,
I can handle that.
I want you to come by to see if anybody's ruining their tires or anything, but we haven't been having any of that. We used to have kids throw footballs over their heads and different things, but I wanted you to know what was going on.
We'll
And
keep
that's
a lid
every
on it.
Saturday night, starting June 16th.
June 16th.
Yeah, through Labor Day. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for audience business?
Hi, I'm Debbie Sims. I live at 809 Upper Fifth Avenue. And tomorrow, we will have lived in our house for 23 years. I just want to say that in the 23 years that we have lived there and have experienced sewer issues, it was never understood to us at any time that it was being done as a favor. So whenever we've had an issue and we've had to call the town and we've worked with Public Works, whoever has been, we've been through a number of administrators and a number of public work directors. The town was responsive. They came up. If there were bills to be sent, most likely it was going to be Steve McCain. The town paid the bills. At times it was other companies that came up as well. But never were we given any verbiage or any language from the town that they were doing this as a favor to us. It was always assumed that this was the town's responsibility. Also, our street also gets plowed when we have enough snow, and we never have been told that that was a favor as well. We are part of town, our sewer structure is part of the town infrastructure, and it was never meant to be a private sewer out there. I just want to state that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. Steve Sims, 809 Fifth Avenue. Is this the time to add additional comments for the item later in the agenda for the sewer?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. I'd like to just read something that we wrote up. We received a statement, a recommendation from Aaron Kaplan, UEB Chair, and in that, I believe you received that in your packets earlier in the week. And we would like to recommend some additions to that for consideration as the board and reviews this a little bit later today, this evening. And I'll just read this. The UEB Upper Fifth sewer recommendations on 5/31/2018 letter could become a cornerstone document in years to come. Based on this 50 years of lost history for this part of the town and the project, projecting it out another 50 years, it is important to include additional language to summarize the research and work done by the town and residents as of now or up till present day. The nature of the summary language that Aaron wrote, I believe, should also capture a little bit of additional information. I have 4 items. As of this time, the extensive research in 2017 and 2018, the UEB believes that the original sewer and gas lines were laid on public lands. Early surveying and lot line adjustments between the 1960s and 2017 have muddled the accuracy of infrastructure placement and whether it is placed on public or private land. So I'd like some kind of language like that to clarify that it is muddled. There's a lot of unknowns about that. The second item, during the 2018 research, an active 6-inch main has been unearthed at 340 Seward Street within the town's jurisdiction and within the town's infrastructure maintenance plans. And I see Joe here this evening. That might be helpful. But just recently, a 6-inch main of town property was discovered. Thus, the 6-inch main we have on our property, or town property, is not an anomaly. There are other 6-inch mains this town is maintaining. Third item, also noted that if the sewer were meant to be private, it would have been recorded as a change to the subdivision and attached to the property deeds as covenants. And there is no documentation in the Boulder County records of reflecting that. And then the last item, the UEB recommends putting a specific date on the town's taking of ownership of this. So we get a little bit more clarification on the date as we refine this. If you find it that it is a town ownership item, then specifying a more clear date of when that ownership can take place. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else for audience business? Seeing none, we'll close audience business. And we will move on to our board and commissions updates. So I'd like to invite our chair to come forward, please. And before I turn it over here, I do have one appointment that I would like to make. I would like to appoint former trustee Jim Kerr to the Utilities Engineering Board. He's applied to join that commission, so a welcome addition, I'm sure, with a lot of background knowledge to contribute. So we appreciate Jim's service and happy to see he'll be continuing to serve the town. All right, thank you. Great, well, welcome.
Okay, Ariel's got a presentation. She's going to follow up here.
Didn't hurt.
Behind trustee Joseph.
speak
Go ahead and
to
start.
what we're doing and without it. Can I read it? The Lions Art and Humanities Commission has been very busy this spring. The most exciting thing is we launched our Call to Artists, which is our Hearts of Lions initiative to bring more public art into Lions. We had a fantastic response. We had 19 sculpture submissions come in. Of these, 3 of them are legacy pieces, which means they've been donated to the town. A couple of them are unique, where there's there's some unique arrangements with a couple of the pieces, like the blue tree that you see out in front of Western Stars. That's a commission piece by John King. And then we have not accepted all of the pieces. We're still vetting some of the works. Some of them are very fragile, and some of them, a couple of them, we have safety concerns with. But maybe 15 of them we will be taking. So you've probably heard rumors about some of these. So some of them are notable. There's a big 10-foot bear coming and a 15-foot dancing woman coming. You can see on the, let's see, if Ariel, you want to jump to a couple of slides. Yeah, okay, good. Most of these are local artists. There is one artist from Iowa who's brought in 3 pieces.
There it is, it's back.
This has really been a lot of fun, but every piece has its own logistical challenges. So we're starting to process these and work with the artists and work with the town on mounting stones and electrical and, you know, just a smattering of different issues with every single piece. But we do hope to run the Call to Artists again. We've extended the date to July 1st. We realize that we're running quickly out of funds because we do pay an honorarium of $750, $375 per year to the artist. And the artist can sell the work off of the highway as long as they replace it with another piece and pay a little something to the town, a little bonus to the town. So that's part of the artist agreement. Ariel has been really involved in designing the artist agreement, which just took forever, many years in development, and with CDOT and this and that, and all the folks involved in that, and all of you that have been involved in that. I really appreciate all your work on that, because that has been a long time coming. And also all the other submission applications, and I mean, this has really been a monster, and there's been a lot of pieces to make fit to this puzzle. So we finally have launched. We'd like to see maybe another 15 or 20 pieces, and I think they're out there, and I think we can get them. There's a lot of artists out there that are coming forward. So we just need to amp up our kitty a little bit, and we're working on doing some fundraising through the Farmat and through our town hall art shows and those kind of things. Okay, so you want to go to the next slide, please, Ariel? These are some more of the pieces. You've seen some of them in town. These are just kind of, some of them are just being staged for the time being because they came to us so quickly that we couldn't quite place them. So we just mounted them, drilled them down, and they are where they are. And of course, the town hall is the recipient right now. And Ariel tells me that's fine. We can just leave them there. So anyway, this is a very dynamic process. It's changing constantly. These are 3 bronzes, actually 4. There's one in the corner is a bronze too. So that's pretty exciting. Okay, next slide, Ariel. And these are the other events we're working on, Good Old Days Art at River Bend and Farm at Dinner. I'm assuming you all have dates for all of these, but I'm happy to share those dates with you. Okay, next slide. We are starting to have conversations about painting all the power boxes in town, and Jocelyn has kind of grabbed this project and is maybe spearheading that, hopefully, and maybe bringing some kids from the schools involved in that. So we're finding out what paint works and what doesn't, and what we can do to the boxes, and which boxes we can do it to, and that sort of thing. And then we'll have a public art walking tour guidebook once these sculptures get down, and this will be the fall, God willing. Each one of these sculptures, it seems to be taking about a week to figure out where it goes, how to get it in. I mean, there are some pieces that are going to require cranes and forklifts, and so we're hoping for the fall, and then we'll have probably an event, maybe a celebration of an art walk kind of celebration in the fall. And then I said we are quickly running out of our budget because we have the LAHC has a tiny budget, so we're requesting $2,800 from the economic development to help supplement our marketing, which is really tiny. But the big expense are the honorariums and any cranes that might be needed, and forklift rentals, and also the plaques that go on each piece. So all these things are kind of starting to add up now, and we're going to run out of funds because it's so successful, and we just want more art. So we have to figure out how to fund it. So that's my story.
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, I think it's amazing how far you all have come. I know it's a long process, and there's a lot of insurance and safety and all kinds of issues with installing art around town. So I've just been amazed to see what's out there, and I really appreciate all your work. As for the request for funding, I'm the liaison to the Economic Development Commission. We actually have very little in the town budget for marketing purposes, but the chamber has a grant, a tourism marketing grant, and they're currently accepting applications for that to delve out money from that pot. So I would, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I would strongly suggest contacting Mike Porter, who is the chamber administrator, and the committee would be happy to sit down and meet with you in person and go through that process with you. We just have we have some events that we're planning on marketing with town funds and with that grant committee fund, so I definitely want to see you guys get in that pot.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Trustee Waugh's comments. I love the art around town, and it's fun. It's great to hear that it's going to change up a little bit too. It's fun to have new pieces. And I guess my question was, have you considered would any of the pieces go in Bone Park? Yes, we're really eyeing that. We haven't actually selected or sat down and talked with Parks and Rec about landing spots, but for lack of a better word to call them, but for example, the Yellow Bear, we would like Sally King's piece, we'd like to move it. And it needs to be in a shaded spot because it's real hot and it's a photo op for kids, and when they sit on it, it's too hot for them, and especially in the summertime. So we see that at Pond Park. And there's a couple other, maybe the piece out in front of your shop, we can move to somewhere else. So yes, and we talked a lot about it. But I think ideally, I'd like to see more out on the highway, coming in on 66. That's where my focus is, and I'm working to try to get really large scale pieces, and especially that triangle when you come into town is just dying for some significant work. So, and
think I might have found something, but it's gotta be quite large. So we wanna put really large pieces out there, and that's, right now, that's my personal focus, because I want people, when they come down that highway, to all of a sudden go, oh, wow, this is a really neat town, this is exciting, look at this is an art-centric place, wow. That's what I'm looking for, big impact. And so we're going after the big stuff right now. We've got some really beautiful pieces, but they're small, and they need to be in a safe place, and they need to be on Main Street, and they need to be mounted, so high, we can't stick them out at Bond Park, it's too risky. So there's some of that. So as we get on down the road here and we get bigger and bigger pieces, we'll start, I think, moving some stuff over. But Bond Park stuff does have to be pretty indestructible.
That's good to understand that you have to really select the piece for the location. The way the trails are now, it just seems really conducive to having a little, like, art scattered along the path. Just really make that interesting. But I love what you're doing. I like the idea of art in the triangle. And I think this is something that gets people out of their car and gets them walking down the street. And I think when they do realize there's one piece here and then they see another one, then they go, oh, okay, now I need to start looking for them, and creates just a lot of great interest. So, if there are other costs that you want to, talk about whether the town can help offset some of the cost of putting them in place or whatever, I'd be open to looking at where that's not a lot of money for us to try to look at where in the budget we can just be covering. So, I support that. Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity.
Making our town more interesting. All right, the next item on the agenda is under ordinances public hearings. It's actually a resolution that has a public comment period. So we had an item on our last agenda, so I don't know that we need a long staff report, but maybe staff want to just introduce the item. And then we can give the applicant maybe an opportunity to present, and then we'll have a public comment.
Sure, so this is, from my understanding, I wish Marcus was here, but part B to what was passed at the last DOT meeting. So, so after the resolution was passed at the May 21st meeting, there's now the next step, which is the resolution to amend the amendable letter of understanding for minor events. And I think it's actually would be helpful if the applicants do come up here, because I don't have as much of the history as they do in terms of how lineup has functioned in the past, some of the challenges we've had with it in town, what they're looking to do and how they're going to. I think also too, there were some questions at the last meeting of how do they do it in terms of safety and security. And then there's another piece in your packet that as part of this is an agreement in that amendment number 1 with the full letter of what the applicant needs to show to preserve this. Do you have any more information? No.
All right, is the applicant on?
Sure. Can I just sit over here?
Sure.
So Craig, sorry you can't join everyone here tonight, but I wanted to give a little bit of background. So I think at the last meeting, we kind of rushed into this a little bit without maybe everybody in the room kind of understanding what we're talking about when we talk about the lineup. Did you guys get a copy of, I sent a 3-page letter with some background information to the board by Victoria and Kim. Just want to make sure everybody has a copy of that.
I don't remember saying that. No.
So I have printed copies here.
Okay.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
Did we get it? I don't remember. I went into our great little filter, that Barracuda.
Well, so apologies if you guys didn't you're just seeing this for the first time, but basically I just wanted to provide a bunch of background information and kind of address some of the questions that came up at the last meeting. Because Plan Bluegrass does some things a little differently, and folks that don't camp at festivals, which a lot of them don't do, maybe aren't familiar with how this works. So what we're talking about here basically is the lineup of people who are attending the Rocky Grass Academy and the Song School, which are two educational events. And the lineup is caused basically by the festivarians attending these events, just love these events so much, and where they camp on site, that there's intense demand for them to have the first pick of where they camp. And so we started doing these events in lines 25-ish years ago. People would start showing up right when the gate opened, and there'd be kind of a little mad dash, and it worked out fine. And then the next year they thought, well, I'll get here a little bit earlier. And so for a couple of years it kind of worked that way, and there'd be a line on Highway 36 as people were kind of trying to get the jump on everybody else. We quickly realized that that was a safety concern with cars on 36, so we moved them all to Railroad Avenue. We did that for 4 or 5 years. At that point, people started arriving multiple days ahead of time. Again, this is people arriving early just to get their camp spot for the Academy and the Song School. We did it, and eventually we got to the point where Railroad Avenue was filled up, and it went all the way down 2nd Avenue to the high school. And this was, people were arriving 2 or 3 days ahead of time. So by the mid-2000s, we worked with the town and with the Sheriff's Office to move this line off of public streets, especially with the concerns about people camping in their vehicles overnight. So we moved it to Bone Park, and that worked pretty well, but there's still the phenomena of people arriving earlier and earlier every year. So in 2009, we said you cannot arrive earlier than 9 o'clock on the Wednesday, 5 days before the event. And of course, that just meant there was a line for people waiting to get in to the line at 9 o'clock. So a lot of what we do at Plan Bluegrass is just manage these lines, really. And so we kind of worked with that, and we've been working with our customers for 8 years. Till last year, we finally decided to take on the big step, which was to disincentivize people from arriving early by having a lottery period where if you arrived during a 1 hour period, you were given a random number, and that spot in line was where you would line up. So there was no reason to arrive before the time we said the lottery period opened. That worked really well, and what we did last year is they arrived during that 1 hour, and then this was still 5 days before the event. But I think we recognized that we could do this lottery period the day of the actual opening of the Academy and the Song School. And so that's what we're proposing that we do this year, which is it's going to involve a lot of communication on our end and careful staffing and planning, and we're, all those plans are in place, but what we are asking now of the board is that we be allowed to do this as a minor event at the Planet Bluegrass farm property. So that's kind of some background on what we're talking about when we talk about lineup. These are vehicles, not pedestrians, just to be clear. So at the Planet Bluegrass camping, you're allowed to drive your vehicle onto the campsite and unload your camping gear. So everybody from these lines are in vehicles. So in the past, when we did this, they were all lined up at Bone Park, and when we decided to open the gate at the specified time, then the Sheriff's Office would work with us to lead these vehicles down 2nd Avenue, down Main Street to the Planet Bluegrass property. And so there was some traffic management, some managing crossings and things. And we feel like the option for this year is going to minimize a lot of this congestion, which Sergeant Chris could speak to here in a minute, by going from a mile distance and several major intersections to what's less than a third of a mile, I guess, and really just the intersection there with Apple Valley Road. So we're proposing that we'll have 4 sheriff's officers there to help coordinate traffic, and again, this is all going to happen on the day that the gates open, so there's no overnight camping. We're talking about a 4-hour period, a several-hour period of the lottery, so people can arrive during that time and they'll get their random spot in line, and then we'll lead them over in waves of 10 to 20 cars, and we're kind of going to be flexible in that and kind of see what traffic patterns look like. So So, so the reason that we're discussing this here today is that there is a restriction that minor events cannot be held on Sundays on the Planet Bluegrass Farm. And just by way of a little bit of background on that discussion, when that restriction came up, that was sort of aimed at events like weddings and evening events on the Planet Bluegrass Farm, and us recognizing that neighbors didn't want to have evening events on the school nights, and so we put in this restriction for Sundays. But just to reiterate, this is going to happen from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. So everything's done at 1 o'clock. There's no central gathering event. We're talking about cars driving onto the property, people waiting, and then those cars driving back to the Planet Bluegrass Ranch. I know there were some questions at the last meeting about what other options were considered. And I think it's important to say that while we're only talking about 200 cars, the way that this lineup has to work with the lottery and the fact that you drive in and you're given a number, we need a lot more space than just 200 camping or 200 parking spaces. Because we need, first of all, we're talking about potentially trailers and RVs, which are going to take up more than just a normal parking space. And we don't know exactly how many vehicles might show up. We're allowed to have up to 250, so we'll have 250 numbers, but we may not hand out all those numbers, so we need some room for the vehicles to maneuver to get into their assigned numerical space during the lottery. So, so while there are some options around town, wastewater treatment plant, possibly the high school in Lone Park, you know, Kim and Paul, Victoria and I met and talked about all these options, both town options, private options like, or non-town options like the high school, and even some county options. And I think we just realized there wasn't enough room in these spaces. And when we looked at the issues in terms of possible traffic congestion from leading the line and from the people just getting onto the property, you know, it's great that the farm has a long driveway that allows to get cars right off the 36 immediately when they pull up to enter the line and get their lineup lottery number.
That's one of the things too that we talked about was with Bone, is because the way the parking used to be in the whole part that's under construction now, they could line up with the vehicles, get their numbers and resort themselves there as well. Whereas now that we have just the car space parking lots, and we, you know, the school has similar, so then we were gonna spread it through, like weaving along Second, maybe into Welch, the high school around. We talked about using possibly the water treatment property that's now the town's, because, you know, and then we did talk about county properties, and we're like, well, that's kind of a similar thing. Now we have to get permission from county, whereas if it's town-owned property, that would be a different thing. And so that's how, you know, we talked about using over Johnson, we're like, oh, Sunday morning, no. So that we did really, as staff, you know, 3 of us kind of talk together and talk about the different ideas that we can try.
So really we're, yeah, so, you know, we're talking about a situation that has come up only because of the love that people have for these events. And Planet Bluegrass, really, we're just trying to manage this in the best way for the town, and for the neighbors, and for the festivarians that come. I mean, this is something that only costs us money, and I guess be careful what you ask for. You know, we didn't expect these events to be so popular 20 years ago, but now they are, and we're really doing everything we can to manage these and have a small impact on the neighbors and keep things as safe as possible, since we're obviously dealing with vehicles here. So we think this is a great option, and we think it's going to have a very minimal impact on the neighbors. And yeah, we ask for your support. Yeah, I guess the only other thing I want to just pose as far as the question is, I notice there's a deposit in this agreement, which is not something we've ever seen before. It's a $1,000 security deposit, which I guess we're sort of curious why that was put on there, why something like Planet Bluegrass is not trusted to be good on all of our agreements, but I'll just throw that out there.
I don't have any knowledge of that.
I don't either. I was informed by the attorney that he discussed that with Craig, and that's all that.
And Craig didn't know why it was. Craig thought it came from someone else, and he was like, well, if we have to do this, we'll do it, because we want to do the right thing here, but yeah, I don't really understand why that was why that was deemed
The
necessary.
only thing that I can think of is Craig did make a comment that he would be covering
He did
attorney
say that,
fees.
sure.
And I don't know if they put it in there just for that, because there was attorney review and time spent to
He
develop
did
the
say that,
document.
yeah.
I don't know if
ensure
that
that
was
all
just-
costs and expenses are borne by owner as required by the amendable letter in this First Amendment, so maybe that's.
It doesn't explicitly say that's what
No.
it's for,
It
but
doesn't.
that's the only thing that I can recall that could have prompted that, but without the attorney.
The one who's head,
Unfortunately.
yeah.
He's out of the country, so.
Yes.
Okay, well, we can take that under consideration. If there are questions at this time, and then we'll have a public comment period, and then we can discuss. If anybody have any questions for staff or, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure, why don't you explain what academy and song school is? Because I'm not sure that everybody understands it, you know.
So in addition to the festivals, the Rocky Brass Festival and the Rocky Mountain Folks Festival, in the 4 days leading up to those two events, we have these educational events that are around 200 people each, and they're camping on site and taking classes with the performers who are going to play at the festival. And so these are educational events that, the actual event is Monday through Thursday, and then the festival is Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Just wanted to-
All right, thank you. All right, since this was a, pretty, lengthy negotiation to develop the amendable letter and the keynotes, we thought it was appropriate to make sure that the public had an opportunity to comment, since this is conflicting with what we all agreed during the annexation process. We thought it'd be good to offer a public comment period, so we'll see if anyone here for public comment for resolution 2018, -46, you can come forward now. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the comment period and open it up for discussion. Anybody, Trustee White?
I have a question for staff, I think. So, in the last resolution that we approved, it was stated that these two lineups would be B2 only events happening on the property in 2018. So it's in that last resolution that we approved, but I'm wondering if anything needs to be stated to that effect in the current resolution, or is it, part of the reason I was amenable to it is because of everything that Played Up Bluegrass is giving up to have these two lineup events. I thought that was a good compromise, so I just want to make sure that's clear, that there aren't going to be other minor events taking place on the property other than these two, or is that?
Well, my review, admittedly recent, of resolution 2018-45 specifically states that owners requesting a one-time modification of section C5 of the keynotes, which permits the two lineup minor events on those specific Sundays. So your question is, does that need to be recited or recited in the current resolution that's before you tonight?
Well, I'm trying to find the part where it says only, these will be the only two.
Are you looking in the prior resolution?
Yeah.
Okay, 2018-45. I have it up from the town's website, and on bottom of page 1, the last two whereas clauses do state owners applied for a modification, and then specifically one time is to occur on the following two Sundays. It doesn't say the word only in that particular last clause.
And I actually thought it did somewhere in the resolution, but it doesn't, but there's somewhere where it says it. But anyway, I guess I should then make sure that that is the case, or?
So yeah, maybe it was in Kim's memo.
I think it's in
Maybe it was in the staff letter.
the memo, but I also thought it was in this.
Well, in this resolution, the second whereas clause says the following two dates and time during the 2018 season
Yes.
only, 1
Yes.
and 2. It just says the 2018 season only. and say the only things in 2018.
Yeah.
But it's very specific, that those are the two things that are being talked about here. There's no creation of precedent or suggestion that other things would therefore automatically, in any other unusual way.
So I'll let Ms. Reister speak.
Yeah, so maybe, so trustee Watt, maybe as I understand you, we volunteered that we don't have plans to have any other minor events in 2018.
Can I ask for a clarification though? So the event that is also on our agenda tonight for September, which is a major event,
Sure.
are you planning on using the farm property for that event?
Yes, we'll be parking there, yes.
For parking?
Yeah, so to be very clear, there will not be any additional minor events there.
Yeah.
But, yeah, absolutely, we're planning to use the farm for parking for a major event.
Because that's actually a question around that event. Does that, our approving is coming up as a different topic, but it is somewhat related to this, that if we automatically approve a major event, does that automatically authorize the use of the farm property for that event? Or do they have to do a separate request to use the farm property for an extra major event that isn't in the keynotes for that annexation agreement?
And I probably need to research this thoroughly to be sure I'm giving a complete answer, but Exhibit B to the annexation agreement does say that the farm is intended to support major events at Planet Bluegrass and to host minor events as approved by the town from time to time. Camping and event parking on the farm are limited to dates of major events as defined in the Planet Bluegrass keynotes.
So that's my question, is this is an extra event that's being added to what's already, I think what's in the keynotes allow for two.
So the keynotes allow for 10 total major event
Yeah.
days. So we're using 3 for Rocky Grass, 3 for Folks. So we're asking for maybe 2 more, which would still allow 2 more unused major event days. Which there's precedent. So we've
Okay.
in the last 6 years we've done 2 other 2-day events in September.
Right, this is just the first time we've had the farm as a component of that, so it's just, we haven't dealt with this yet to see, as long as they're within the 10 days, then on the annexation agreement, they don't need to do anything extra to be able to use.
Not to my knowledge right now. I would have to thoroughly review every line to be 100% sure in representing that to you, but the language I have had the opportunity to review this afternoon seems to point in that direction.
Yeah, okay, no, I think it's just worth clarifying so we all understand kind of what they need to do when they have extra events, minor or major. What's the process going to be? Okay, any other comments or any other questions?
I had a series of sort of technical perfecting kind of comments. They're not substantive, and I hate to bore people with it, but they're not completely insignificant. One is in the amendment, item number 3B. It's originally just says, no camping shall be allowed at the 2018 lineup minor. So we need the word event. And then the other thing is, I would suggest in putting in the word, no camping shall be allowed on the Planet Bluegrass farm property, because there will be camping going on across the street that night, and just so nobody can come back and parse words. Then on the vehicle lineup plan, the event plan, there's the time of the event, and I was just suggesting that since it says tentative times are listed below, that you might consider putting it in, but in no event earlier than 6 a.m. and in no event later than 6 or 7 p.m. Whatever you think is a reasonable outside parameter. And again, the reason is, for people looking at it and say, well, this is kind of loose and we don't know, it could be, it says tentative, it could be till 11:30 at night, that sort of thing. Just putting outside parameters, I don't think that'd be a big issue. Then there on, in the event plan also, there's that reference to the, to camping. And that'd be good to say on Planet Bluegrass farm property specifically, that's D.
What number?
3D.
It's in the event plan. and
Event
it is
plan.
number
Just D.
one date, yeah.
And then one, or a couple others, and it's just a typo kind of thing. On page 3, M says pedestrian traffic, all pedestrian traffic will operate, which is fine, but then N says vehicular traffic, all pedestrian traffic will, and, yeah, so I'm just.
Should stay vehicular.
And then, it says no campfires. Is it okay for grills, or are grills also prohibited? I just wondered.
You know, we sort of keep an eye on the state of fire bans, but,
I think they might be prohibited in the keynotes. I have to go back and look. I think I saw reference to, but you know this way better than I do. But,
Sean might have that.
If I may, my name is Sean, I'm the operations director for plan. It was our understanding when we submitted the major event plan that within it enclosed was a permission to the board when it got approved to allow for small grills and such. This minor event that we're doing has no overnight camping, and since it was not included in that, no grills, no fires.
So that's why I was thinking it might be good to say no campfires or grills.
Okay, yep.
so add that in, you're fine with that, okay.
And I gave a copy of these to the top attorney.
Yeah,
so
I've got
she
them.
can-
Yeah, it's here. Yep.
Trustee Farrell?
So I want to say I appreciate your giving the background information, and I think when you made the comment that if you are a resident of this town, you don't necessarily have an insight as to the camping processes, because I really didn't understand last week, or last meeting, I was quite confused. But I'm new to this board, and so I'm still not 100% got my mind around, because I was not here during the 2017 negotiation terms of the annexation process. And so that was not that long ago. And I'm just kind of curious as to the process of how did the minor event come up in a way that it was like, oh, we didn't go through that, that wasn't somehow included in our negotiation. In other words, we know that Sunday is not going to be one of the days that we allow, and yet here we are, probably what, 6 months later. So, and I imagine as an organization as long that you guys have been around 20 years, you probably think about these things a year plus in advance in your planning. So I'm a little not clear in my head about making an exception to something that went through such a rigorous process to develop. So I kind of still need to understand that help me with the lack of knowledge there.
So I think it was almost a year, actually, June 8th, I think, is June 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess we can refer back to the minutes, but my recollection of the restrictions on the dates on the minor events was sort of one of the last things we added when there was, I was really reacting to concerns from neighbors about weddings. We put in wording about no restrictions for the weddings, and as a in addition to that, I think we agreed to this idea that, well, we'll just have the weddings on Fridays and Saturdays. And this kind of all happened at this last specially called meeting, which doesn't excuse it. I mean, so certainly we take responsibility and regret that this was an oversight on our part. But that negotiation really was about weddings and farm-to-table dinners and evening events where people would come solely for a central gathering. And unfortunately, it was our oversight that these lines, which we don't really love these lines, yeah. Something that we just have to deal with. And it was something that I think at the time we felt like it was more important that the neighbors understand that there would not be weddings on any other night besides Friday on school nights. And we just didn't consider it. And you know, had there not been construction at Bone Park, think in the back of our mind, there's sort of the feeling as well that, well, we could do those lines at Bone Park, you know, to, as we're trying to understand all the mechanics of the property. And so that kind of backed us into the situation here where we want to do something on Sunday morning, and in retrospect, you know, it should have said restrictions on events on Sunday evenings or evenings of school. I think is probably where our planning went wrong, was not considering these morning events.
So.
Which aren't really events, you know, again, it's really, we're just staging cars to move on to the property, so fortunately, it just kind of got overshadowed our mind as we're more concerned about these concerns stated directly by neighbors, which was about evening things happening on the property.
So then my next question would be, is this something that's going to be changed differently for 2019 and beyond, or is this what you're hoping to be the new fix for a long-term solution? In other words, changing, basically needing to go back and amending the full, the full annexation process.
So if we were to make that change, yeah, we sure would have to go through PCDC. That would be essentially the zoning change.
So that's, I guess, what my question is that's your plan?
You know, at this point, I don't know. I guess we'll see how things go this year. And look at what other options open up next year. And see if this is, maybe that everyone feels like this is the best option. Even if we had Bone Park available to us for parking, if we don't this year. I think we'll just kind of all sit down and evaluate how the farm worked as a property at the end of the season, and see if there are aspects of that we can work with the town to find a solution that I think that's right. But I can't comment on how it will work in the future. We'll do our best to make it work this year.
So, I mean, my comments last time were really kind of more in, not disputing that this is a hassle for you guys, for the town, for everybody. Love to hear if you could find a better way. I mean, I do think it's a different traffic flow, and, you know, last time Craig said maybe they would do a loop around town and come in, so it's a right turn, not a left turn. I mean, I don't know that, I agree that the discussion probably centered more on kind of wedding type events, but I think that the neighbors are also just, how many times do you see people over there and have traffic coming in and out? I mean, it affects a couple different neighborhoods when I happen to live in, which I'm not that worried about the traffic. I try to ride my bike that whole week because there's just no point in trying to drive anywhere. My biggest problem is that I did not see the path in the document. The document starts with the only two places where it really gives the board any authority to modify this document requires a 90-day prior notice, and we didn't have that for the first event. We had it for the second one, but not the first one. So my whole issue is that I didn't think the board had the authority to make the change, and I still don't. I don't think we actually have the authority to modify the keynotes without the sufficient notice, and we're conflicting with what the keynotes said. We're allowing essentially an event on Sunday when the keynotes pretty clearly say no minor events on Sunday. And I think that, you know, I just have echoes in my head of the pretty full chambers that were here to say, you know what, once it's done, you won't have any control over what happens. And I think this is just giving them fodder. And there may be some people who don't check our agendas, lots of people don't. And they come in after the fact and say, well, what happened? Because they may remember that the only 2 days you can have these events or have any activity on the property is Saturday, Friday, and Saturday. So when they see something on Sunday, that's when they're gonna come and say, what happened, what changed? And we will have to answer for that. And that's why I just felt like, you know what, maybe if it's a one-time event, which is what I am trying to reconcile, is if this is so much better, why would we go back to the old process, which we would theoretically if Lone Park were available? If not, why are we doing this? I guess it's just, to me, it's just board credibility, really, that I'm concerned about, more or less. That, you know, we're out of the gate before there's even one event making exceptions. And it's gonna be an interesting year, I think, for the property, and, you know, are we being compliant with all of the annexation agreement? I have concerns about whether we are already compliant. And to you know, we're making exceptions where we have questionable authority to do so. And I think that that's really risky for a board to do, where it's not really clear that we have the authority to make the exceptions. It's unfortunate that it wasn't, that we didn't think about it, or think about this as an event. But there's also other things in here. It allows 250 people, and we're really talking about 250 cars. Well, how do we didn't contemplate this event, clearly, when we wrote the document, and I get that. And I am appreciative of what you guys go through to make these things happen, so I'm not arguing necessarily what's easier or what might work better. It's more about making sure that as a board, we don't sacrifice our credibility for the next annexation that comes forward. So that's why I voted against the resolution, and I will vote against this tonight, just for that reason. Because I do think that if we can get through outdoor games, we probably could have lined up a couple hundred cars, figured it out somehow. So that's just my thought.
And I wish Marcus was here.
I'm not taking
But
personally.
just because we did get an email, and I don't have that history in front of me right now, but I feel like it was in late April, I wanna say April 24th.
April 24th was
Is that-
89 days.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Where we were either, notified of what can we do, and that's when, honestly, as staff, Paul and I are the newest two people to it, got the emails, worked with then, asked Victoria, I think, what do we do? We had a meeting, said we'd have to reach out to the attorneys, because I think, as you all know, that the keynotes and the amenable letter and the CE one, it's a lot, and it's long, and it's very legalese, especially from a staff perspective in terms of understanding it. So then it seemed like from the attorney's standpoint that there was a path forward if the board approved at the May meeting an exception to the 90-day, but I honestly don't know that I'm the best person to explain what we passed 2 weeks ago.
I was just pulled up my calendar counting the days. I haven't had occasion to look at that, but 89 days, or 88, depends on how you count. That's not 90, right?
Well, I think we acknowledged in the resolution that we were just waiving the 90-day requirement.
Okay.
It's in the resolution, and I see no authority in the keynotes for the board to do that. The board doesn't have we're not above what agreements we sign. We have to comply with these agreements. We put them in processes. We have long proper processes to hammer these things out, and we spend a lot of time on it. And it's not, I get it, it's not a huge deal. Maybe no one will notice and no one will complain, but we will know when we didn't, so I just think if we expect the applicant to follow through on the agreements, we need to also be following the agreements. So that was my point. Trustee Watt.
Question for staff, and I guess I also have to say, I was in favor of the resolution that we passed last meeting, but I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I agree with Mayor Sullivan's comments about what's our authority as a board, and I do feel comfortable making a change because the keynotes give us the authority to do that. I think we can be more restrictive or less restrictive with that authority, but I don't feel comfortable with waiving that 90-day requirement. So my question for my long-winded question for staff would be, could we allow the minor event for Folks Fest, the Sunday, August 12th event? We did have 90-day requirement for that. Could we strike out the earlier event, and if we did that, do we have to go back to the resolution that we passed, or can we not do that because we already passed the first resolution?
Well, I'm reading that resolution from May 21st, and it does specifically adopt the recitals in which the board desires to waive the 90-day advance application deadline for the July 22nd event. So it looks to me like that decision has been made by the board as a group, as a body, to waive that 90-day requirement.
Okay, let me ask a different question. If we don't pass this resolution tonight, what happens?
Well, your direction in the May 21st meeting was to staff to finalize an amendment to the amendable letter of understanding incorporating the requirements. This resolution to schedule the board's consideration for action at June 4th or June 18th, regular BOT. You don't have to approve what's before you tonight. You just directed staff to bring before you what it has brought before you, and I suppose you could make a decision on the discrete events in terms of whether or not to approve them, but you have effectively already waived the 90-day requirement. And so that's the leg upon which you would state that the board has no authority.
Mayor Pro Tem, there's
My
some suggestions.
recollection is that the town attorney present at the time informed the board that we did have the authority.
That's what I'm
And-
Correct,
understanding.
he did.
And I suspect he did that based on something,
I suspect that too.
and that it may be helpful for that, something to be introduced, so.
We could, since the direction has been to bring it forward at either tonight or the June 18th meeting, table this and find out, if we can, what that may have been. You're not required to do that, but that is an option.
I can look through my emails of what Marcus said. With that, in terms of when.
My recollection is the same language, that gives the board the authority to amend or change those conditions in the keynotes. I guess, I mean, I'm just saying when I read this, and I'm not an attorney yet, admittedly, but I mean, the way I read it, the way I think an average citizen would read this, is that we have that authority to do it upon an application by the owner made not less than 90 days of the date commencement and the commencement of a minor event. And I think there was admittedly not a 90-day notice, which is why the resolution basically said we were gonna waive that. But to me, I don't know, it seems
You had
unclear
authority to
how
do
we
that.
have that authority. That's my interpretation, clearly not an attorney. So if there is something else, we could certainly consider it now. We could also just say as a board, you know what, we're not gonna go back and question our old decisions. We clearly thought we had the authority, or most of us, the majority did. So here we are. The other possibility is we put something forward and see how it goes. We do have one less trustee here tonight. You know, my concern is that I don't wanna end up here again. I mean, I think Trustee Farrell makes a good point, is that we're doing this one-time event, and we'll be here again next year saying, well, that worked out really well. Can we just waive that? Here's our 90-day application, and we kind of roll that way. And I'm not comfortable with that becoming the precedent. So, you know, if in Trustee Waz's understanding that this is the only minor event in 2018, with an understanding this is a one-time situation, with maybe stronger language indicating that any future modifications for a similar minor event would have to go through the full rezoning process, so that it can't be done through this process again, as a just application maybe step. Because I mean, it sounds like you've been doing this for many, many years, and you haven't, by the way, avoided the lineup. The lineup seems to occur to get into the property no matter what you do, correct?
Yeah, at this point.
So,
It's really, you know, like I say, it probably, so it would happen no matter what. If we have nothing to do with this, and there's no place to do it, then, I guess they're just vehicles all over town, probably, I don't know what it's over this
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, is there any confusion, or can I clarify anything on the congestion, how it's operated before in this process that I've reviewed already? I mean, I know there's a lot of legal stuff that's way over my head, okay? So, just from our perspective then, I think, moving it out of what we've been doing is, it reduces our staff, it reduces the congestion through town and all that stuff, so. From the glasses I look through, it's more convenient and easier for the town and our staffing to move cars from the farm to Bluegrass, as opposed to anywhere else, either the high school or Bond Park or wherever. There's a lot more moving parts, a lot more deputies, a lot more congestion when we do these, and I've been doing these moves for a long time as well, so.
Yeah,
That's
I
what I'm looking
appreciate that, and I don't think we're arguing so much that, I think what we're trying to sort out is a political problem we will have eventually. And I think that the issue, is again, because we're being asked to conflict with what the keynotes were agreed to, which is the Sunday, which is not going to change in future years, right? I mean, the lineup is gonna happen on Sundays, pretty much
Yeah, I mean,
indefinitely.
so the schools are, Monday through Thursday. I mean, and I think speaking to the point, if this worked out well and we decided this is how we want to do it in the future, we would not go through this process. The process would be one of zoning change, I think, with the PCDC and the entire public process, which is really how this is designed to work. It's a ton of work, but in that case, I think that's how we would go about it, not trying to do this.
If I may, Mayor, I'd like to try and answer your question about the authority the board has. I read through the amendment letter of understanding many times, trying to put together a plan that best fits the town's safety. And there was a paragraph in there, and I did not come prepared to argue this. However, there was something in there that I remember saying that a minor event, since those are planned a lot shorter in preparation for, such as weddings, which is what the minor event was written to kind of accommodate. There's something in there that says that we have 60 days to notice, to make notice to the board instead of the 90 in there, but then it went back in, there's a second paragraph later that it contradicts itself, saying that a minor event needs 90. So that might be what the lawyer had mentioned somewhere in there, and I apologize, I don't have
No, you have a good memory.
I'm
But the piece that you're referring to is that you do have to notice the town when you're going to hold a minor event and gives the town 60 days notice. The problem is that the minor event is occurring on Sunday, which conflicts with the keynotes.
Yeah, those are two different.
That's where, and then the 90 days comes in when you want us to make an exception to the keynotes. So you're right, there is a 60-day notice for minor events. If it's the normal, just, hey, we want to have a minor event, and it's an event that's allowed by the definition
Friday or
of keynotes,
Saturday,
it's on Friday or Saturday, it's no more than 250 people, and great, and you only need 60 days. So there's a couple different notice periods that are defined in here.
And that's where,
Sorry, it's just the keynote is the document that prevails over the amendable letter of understanding that creates that, so.
and just to explain our thought process, we went through and made sure that we were clear on our major event plan for you guys first, and then we were gonna go through the minor event plan, which we thought was due in the less amount of time, and then this conflict arose 89 days. So we're trying to do the best for the town, because I don't want to have 200 cars around the wastewater treatment plant are filling up the streets. So we're definitely trying to be open to other plans. However, this is definitely the best option we see for public safety this year. And yes, we do anticipate having to do this again in the future, but we're just trying to have a safe event this year.
Thank you.
May I read,
Hang on 1 second, I'm gonna, Mayor Pro Tem have a comment, and then come back to you.
Yeah, similar to Trustee Law and Mayor, I am troubled by having heard people say and predict that the town will roll over whenever there's a request on these occasions. And that is troubling. So that's one hand. The other hand is that we have a recommendation from the sheriff deputy that says that at least what I interpreted said is that it's safer and less
problematic for the town to have it going from the farm to the site. Is that, am I representing that correctly?
Absolutely.
In addition to that, we're talking about something that is extraordinarily beneficial for the town overall. It is a circumstance that was not considered explicitly during the discussion, although I wish it really had. I wish it had come up during the discussion so that it was clear that we're talking, that the limitations were related to evening events and the disruptions that people feared with music and lots of people. So it becomes one of those balancing acts. When you, I, at least as one person, think 89 days compared with if this had been rushed in 10 days in advance for something to be done with no public discussion, no public opportunity for comment. I do think of those things as different, and sort of on balance and weighing it, it seems to me that the benefits of it put us in a position where we have to really look for, if you will, if we can find the authority to make this exception. I look to the town attorney to advise us on that, but I hope there is a way for us to do it, and I believe there should be, because I believe that a town board should be able to look at these kinds of things analytically and make an assessment about, is it good for the town on balance? And then also make sure we have a very, very clear understanding about the business case, the safety case, the relationship case, that would lead us to a decision, and not just say, look, we made that decision, we don't care what you have to say. People will talk about this. I mean, I heard the words, I know you're gonna just go ahead, whatever that wants, and so, when I'm asked that again, I'm gonna have to be able to say, this is why, exactly why we made the decision, if in fact we do make that decision. But I think it is ultimately good for the town.
All right, did you have one more comment?
Well, in my email, I can read what Marcus put in. Just if that helps for the clarification, I guess, from maybe Trustee Waugh's question.
And that is also incorporated in the resolution that was
Okay.
passed at May 21st, I believe.
So he said, the landowner is requesting a modification of section C5 of the keynotes, page 4, to permit minor events for car lineup for 2 specific dates, July 22nd and August 12th. On each of these dates, I understand that the landowner wants to allow students' vehicles onto the farm, to allow vehicles to line up, and allow event organizers in the Boulder County Sheriff Office to escort the students to the Planet Bluegrass property. Currently, section C5 of the keynotes does not allow any minor events on any Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Section C5 states that upon application by the owner made not less than 90 days prior to the commencement of a minor event, the Board of Trustees may modify or alter the restrictions provided by this section where the board finds that there will be no detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the public, and that such modification or alteration is generally consistent with the conceptual plan. The BOT will need to consider and approve a specific waiver of the 90 days prior language for the July 22nd date. The application for the August 12th date is timely. I recommend that the modification of the keynotes be memorized by resolution. If the BOT approves the request that there is no detriment to the health, safety, and welfare and generally consistent with the conceptual plan, and the board supports it, then we can bring forward at a June meeting an amendment to the amendable letter of understanding. I don't know if that cleared it up, but
I think what he is saying, again, on on first review. I think what he's saying is that the keynotes allow modification if there's a finding of public health, food safety, and welfare, et cetera. I am not sure without hashing it out more with him, but that means that the 90-day requirement can be waived. The way I look at the keynote language, it says, upon 90 days notice, then the board may modify. I tend to agree with what the mayor's interpretation of that language is. That being said, I do think that the board has established a limited direction and policy guidance in this specific circumstance for one event that we've had testimony that is not adverse to health, safety, and welfare, and may indeed improve it. So I do agree this is largely a political matter rather than a legal matter at the end of the day. I think in parsing the words, technically speaking, the clock ran out on event number 1. But I don't think you're, well, I think it's political. You're not gonna be subject to any legal challenge, probably, by waiving this and going on a 1 or 2 day.
So I think we have a pretty, thank you for the explanation. I think we have a pretty good understanding of where we are. So at this point, I would entertain a motion on the resolution, and we will go from there.
I'll make the motion. I would like to approve resolution 2018-46 with the following amendment. That in the second whereas, and I'll just read it and then tell you what I'm going to add at the end. So the second whereas reads, the prior resolution conditionally authorizes Planet Bluegrass to conduct minor events on the Planet Bluegrass Farm property on the following 2 dates and times during the 2018 season only, Sunday, July 22nd, Sunday, August 12th. And then I would like to add the following. I guess it would be after the second whereas. And whereas these will be the only 2 minor events conducted on the property in 2018.
The only 2 minor events conducted on the property during 2018.
So essentially, I just want to add to the resolution and just restate that these will be the only 2 minor events that will take place in 2018 on the Planet Bluegrass Farm property.
Everybody said that was correct.
I guess, and I don't know, that might be a
You mean on
question for Brian.
Sundays?
You mean on Sunday, you don't mean like they have to worry about weddings on Friday and Saturday, or do you?
So it was my understanding that there aren't any other minor events planned on the property. Maybe there's major events planned, but not
That's
any
true.
other minor events planned.
So, again, we made the decision, to focus on doing our major events and festival-related events as best as we can, and kind of dedicate all of our energy towards that. So we don't have plans to do any minor events. We didn't expect that to be part of this resolution, but if that helps people feel good about this, we'd be okay with that.
Yeah, and it was stated in the prior resolution that we passed at the last meeting. And so for me, it is an important piece because it shows that Planet Bluegrass is working in good faith effort with us. You're making a huge compromise by foregoing any other minor events in 2018. So that's a big piece of why I'm in favor of passing the resolution and working with Planet Bluegrass and taking the political hit. Because I do feel it's actually a much better way to line it up in the future. And I totally trust that if it does work out and that's the way you want it to work in the future, that you are going to go through a regular PCDC zoning process. So given all that, that's kind of my reasoning for supporting the resolution, even though I am uncomfortable having waived the 90-day requirement in the past resolution. But
Do you have a second part to your motion?
I'll second.
Okay.
Because you said amendments with following amendments.
Oh, I only said one, amendment, sorry.
No, that's fine.
So it would be adding the whereas after the second whereas.
These will be the only 2 minor events conducted on the property during 2018, regardless of day or time, just
Correct.
blanket, okay.
Okay, we have a motion second. I think trustee Miller had any further
No,
discussion?
no.
Okay, sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
I would also like to amend the motion by asking that the technical ones that I made
right.
earlier would be included.
I would accept that amendment.
Well, okay, so I guess we're supposed to
We
get
have to do
second,
one
vote
at
on,
a time.
vote
So
on that.
there's a
Okay.
motion to amend for the language
Right.
submitted by Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion on that amendment? No, I'll call for the
Wait,
vote.
are we doing
Just
the second one first?
Yes,
right? Okay.
yes, so that you
Well,
guys.
but yours is just the motion with
Correct.
zero
Basic
changes, so
Right.
yours is the primary motion.
Okay.
So we'll call for the vote on this
I
one.
gotcha.
Sorry, can everybody
This
vote,
one
please?
always throws me off.
Okay, there you go. Okay, that passes 6-0. Any other amendments? I would like to offer an amendment, actually. Would the board, I would like to move that we add a new section to the resolution after section 1, stating that no future requests for modifications to the keynotes for a similar minor event beyond 2018 be requested unless it is done through the standard rezoning process.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion on
Is it for 2018 only?
that? Basically, this makes it a one-time for this type of request.
Just a quick question, that doesn't limit in any way the ability of Plan of Bluegrass to go through the regular process for modifications.
Correct. It's just for if the lineup comes back again in 2019, they can't be done through modification request. Yeah. I mean, if you want to make this the permanent process, you need to go through the rezoning. That's essentially what it is. Any further discussion? Call for the vote.
Who's your second? Oh.
That passed 6-0. I actually have one additional amendment, changing the language for item number 3, G, which is the security deposit. I think it would just be more, I think the commitment was made that the applicant would be reimbursing the town for attorney fees associated with the work that went into bringing this application forward. So replacing the security deposit with just the owner shall remit or reimburse the town for attorney fees related to the modification.
Isn't that in the resolution or
The amendable
It's
letter.
actually in the letter.
Related to, for attorney fees related to the, cost of the amendment to the amendable letter?
Correct. And I think you can keep the second part of that, if all expenses are paid by the owner and the town does not incur any unforeseen expenses. I mean, it might actually work better to separate that. I'm okay waiving the deposit if the staff is okay with that. I don't know if that was something staff felt was necessary.
It wasn't something we felt was necessary.
Um,
The attorney did.
I don't know if the attorney has a suggestion here, but.
Well, it's a matter of how you want to do business, it seems to me. Do you want to have the money up front and then deduct in the return anything that's not expended, at least have
The
that?
same process as planning commission.
Right, any kind of planning application really, so, or are you happy just saying, this is the agreement and without the upfront kind of teeth?
Well, actually, it might, this section actually refers to costs associated with the actual event.
Yeah.
I don't know if the town anticipates any costs associated with the event, maybe we've already talked about that, it's already taken care of, I thought.
I think you guys are paying for it.
Yeah, we've paid for that.
Yeah,
Decades.
so that wouldn't be, unless there are other costs that we are concerned about.
And then, and just for the record, when we have billed the planet for any of Boulder County Sheriff's Office time, they pay it very promptly.
I think this is, so would it be better just to put it in the resolution then, and leave the amendable letter and delete the $1,000? So my motion, let me revise my motion.
Yeah, I'd rather have it in the agreement than in the resolution if it's a term.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So my motion is basically to, and we can leave the wordsmithing to the attorneys afterwards, but to delete the requirement for the security deposit of $1,000 and insert language that would add language that the applicant will reimburse the town for attorney fees related to submitting a request for modification.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Call for the vote on the amendment. And it passes 6-0. Are there any other amendments? All right, hearing none, I'll call for the vote on the overall motion to approve the resolution. All right, I'm just gonna say I appreciate your brain damage that you had to endure because of this request. I'm sure this is not exactly what you guys would all like to spend your time on either. But I do think it's important for us to hash out, the fact that we're bending rules already, but we want your events to be successful and they're really great for the town. And and if this works out, hindsight, we gotta go back and make some changes, but maybe there'll be other changes you'd like to make anyway. So I appreciate your patience in working me through it. So I'm gonna vote for this, even though I think the board at the last meeting took on the issue, and the majority was that we should go ahead and waive it, even though we didn't really have maybe, in my opinion, the authority to do so, but that was the decision of the board to move forward tonight. So I think with the amendments, I will support it. All right, I'll call for the votes. All right, it passes 6-0. All right, we're not done yet. Yes, is there a motion to take a short recess?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Call for the votes.
He don't get on there yet.
For recess. Thank you.
And I was gonna ask you two another question.
Well, yeah.
No, I was gonna ask both of you another question, but that's like.
Yeah.
Wow, how are you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
You guys are off day. Have a good night, guys.
Oh, good for her. I mean, I try to worry about that one. Okay, good for her. Well, that's a very stressful later night. Yep, I know. Yeah, that's great. Tell her I wish her all the best of luck. She'll do fine.
The only reason I was limited.
And so,
Well, it kind of really, we're in a process of next year. Part of it is we're actually working with the sheriff's office because they're still doing traffic studies.
So,
do we have a follow-up?
yeah, or I mean, just for me, I was
And then
Put in the newspaper.
the information Sean got.
Paul would have to pull that up, because I don't remember exactly what they were.
I think there is something.
I know one of them was, do we have to have two different licenses?
Oh, yeah. Remember that, Paul?
Just say,
Sure. But it was like,
Yeah.
it's really what you done by one.
yes, by setting it this way, it's tentative.
That's fine, if you don't think that's the right one.
I could be wrong.
Earlier would be less directing, you're right, exactly. That's the reason.
You know, my,
But it might have been just the thing on the right.
Which has to be your report, when they came back, they stayed.
Yeah, pretty much fine.
But they said they didn't. Like
You're one of the last.
But that one's not, I'll write about one.
Hey, Amy, you were late, but you didn't miss out on that.
Oh, I was here for the workshop, part of the workshop, I left to eat, and I came back, when I came back, the world too early.
Yeah, you never know.
Oh, yeah. I was talking to Catherine, we did last year.
That worked for me. I'd wait for that.
Yeah, we might be a good person, is the communications person, but they might, do a series on. How's our friend doing? Those rentals and things, 'cause it was sort of a discussion I had a while ago, like, can we have a, you know, and it's an informal thing in the community, it's not. But.
There's two
There to say, here's how these
Right.
here's how you do it, here's how. Right about now?
You know, it's over once a week. Getting to pay the town $1,000.
Date July 11th.
Oh. Yes. So if they have that.
I know. And then the other thing is the event in September.
Oh, so, not that it would be well,
Yeah.
they're asking us.
Can you remind me, please turn that on when I sit down?
Oh, is it already off?
If I don't forget.
That's a hard job.
Friday, Saturday.
Set a timer.
And I think it's selling pretty well.
All of that too.
It's pretty good, so we thought we would.
Wasn't it?
It's so huge that you guys are doing this now, because I still remember when people tried
Oh,
it
yeah.
for a long time.
They say, no, it's down.
So,
Oh, yeah. But you know, you want yourself on the agenda, but you have to.
No, I wanna go back there.
Wait.
it's really
We can't have the artists
Yeah.
until July.
okay. Versus having like a person that was.
And if it leaks out from us, it's like, they can.
Let's put it right there.
Well,
I'm doing that.
I'll send it out.
I gotta be.
And then it's like, it's, dan's so great. You know, short notice.
I know, it's, they're down there with their mom, and my son was here, but, so the guy's happy to spend the whole summer. So anyhow, it's here, so we don't go anywhere.
Yes, I remember, that was a good meeting. We had a very long February. Walking through just to the random counts my head. Just a few weekends I did that, I think you analyze that out in full months. I just paid for all.
So it's fun.
Often counts just that money. That's what I would have. We are just.
It's getting better, our church
Well,
It's nice.
the best thing though was just we had 1 year old. We got someone said Crystal there. The park goes through.
At some point, you should, it should include that.
What are you gonna do about that? Me, not so much, but there's 4 sheriff deputies in there, and they turn around. So that's what we talked about, like Sergeant Chris and stuff, was like, get in front of it now.
Oh, yeah.
So that, I would never go home and say, don't go to Lion, but it's just been,
That takes care of it. I don't like the phone.
And what? Yeah, it's been pretty bad.
But not like 4 days.
Yeah, I hear you, I generally never have.
All that, right?
You know, and I live right over in Dublin.
How many? Oh my God.
But I think in that
Are these all consent? Is consent next?
Especially dogs out here. My dog was had one,
Right,
right?
no, it's cold.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because at least when consent is
Take care of it. Then there's some other. But the only thing that saved my dad's life was the board.
Oh, God.
Was the pinch collar. Pinch collar.
So that's
Pinch
before
collar.
the
Now,
music
two
was rooted.
of them were best.
Why would they do that?
Well,
Why?
with
Who was the
You know.
Not really.
Okay.
It's really simple.
Joe, who's the paving company that got the bid this time? That's doing the work so far? You don't know who it is? They haven't done Fourth yet, correct? Not the curve, up by the post office.
I don't think they want to try to do anything.
Okay, so I just need to follow up.
Oh, yeah, all new managers, new part, yeah. So, yeah, not that we're collecting money.
Oh, yeah.
Then the
No.
camping.
Summit, yeah, I haven't heard of them. They are,
Upkeep.
Thank you.
Which will adjust.
No, that's
they're gonna, she's gonna give an update on that. I'll give an update. It's a fun.
I'll be there. $50
Yeah, oh,
versus wandering and calling and
Trying to
showing
figure
up,
out
and if
what
it's
their
raining,
options
jokes
are
around.
to decide with the overall plan.
Okay,
If they have
gotta get back to business here. Are you broadcasting tonight?
Yeah.
It's not on.
Oh, she turned it off.
Oh, I didn't think that, but that's
Oh, that one.
We lost the thing to do that. The recording?
Okay, what's next on the agenda here?
Consent agenda.
Consent agenda. All right, will the clerk please read the items on consent into the record, please?
Resolution 2018-42, a resolution approving a Fourth Amendment to the Economic Development Administration Grant Agreement, Financial Assistance Award Number 05-01-05374, for extending public services to the eastern portion of the town of Lyons and its planning. Number 2 is Resolution 2018-48, a resolution approving a lease of town-owned property with Telluride Bluegrass Festival for the 2018 Mountain Sun 25th celebration. Number 3 is Resolution 2018-47, a resolution approving a park license agreement for use of town-owned property by Telluride Bluegrass Festival, PVC, for summer 2018 festivals. Number 4 is a resolution 2018-49, a resolution of support and approval for the Town of Lyons Economic Development Commission's application for the USDA Rural Business Enterprise Grant. Number 5 is the first reading for ordinance 1039, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lyons, amending section 18-1-40 of the Lyons Municipal Code, replacing and reenacting Articles 2 through 10 of Chapter 18 of the Town of Lyons Municipal Code, and adopting by reference the International Building Code 2015 edition, International Code 2015, and including Appendix Q for tiny houses, International Mechanical Code 2015 edition, International Plumbing Code 2015 edition, the International Property Maintenance Code 2015 edition, International Existing Code 2015 edition, and the International Energy Code Conservation Code 2015, International Swimming Pool and Spa Code 2015 edition, International Fuel Gas Code, and the 2015 making specific amendments to the above reference codes and adopting a new Article 15 of Chapter 18 of the Town of Lyons Municipal Code by reference of the National Code, Electric Code for 2017, addition as the Town of Lyons Electric Code, and June approval, and the May 21st, 2018 Board of Trustees meeting minutes.
All right, do you need another break?
Yes.
Would anyone like to pull any items from consent?
I'd like to pull item number 2 and item number 4.
Any others? I would like to pull item number 3, please. Is there a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent?
I move, we approve the items on consent except for 2, 3, and 4.
I'll second that.
Right, any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the votes. And those items are approved, 6-0. Okay, general business item number 1 is Upper Fifth Water Line discussion and direction to staff. We had 2 memos, brief memos in our packet with the UEB recommendation. Does the board have any comments regarding this? The recommendation, which is to proceed with accepting the infrastructure from the, I don't know what to call it. We'll call it a main, a 6-inch line, whatever the 6-inch line is, as the UAB described it in their recommendation. So does staff have any comment regarding the recommendation?
No, we basically can live with anything. I mean, it's up to the board. It's a political decision at this point. There's no engineering relevance.
So you concur with it?
Yeah, but I'm fine with the UEB's recommendation.
Okay. I mean, as far as the recommendations regarding the schedule for improvements, is there anything you would change regarding the improvement recommendations?
No, and I talked this over with Aaron earlier, and I agree with that we're just gonna have to program that in with everything else that makes sense. We can't jump that ahead of other priorities.
Okay, so is there, I'm sorry, Jessica, have a question?
I do have a question. I feel like in a way maybe we skipped something, or I'm not following, but did we do the cameras through the line and we've got a report back that, yes, in fact, things, I guess I never saw that report, so.
Thank you for, yeah, you did the camera, I thought, right?
Yeah, they went through the camera. I have not seen the results yet, though.
Oh, okay, so we're making the recommendations without that information?
Yes, based on these recommendations, I don't think it really matters.
I think the question I have is what is the condition? I think we did want to know that before we accepted the line, so I think that is a valid point. We have the UEB recommendation. When do you think you would have the camera?
Oh, I'm sure I could get it for the next meeting.
Okay. So is there so the board, I'm hearing maybe some interest in getting those results first, or do we want to ask the staff to prepare a resolution? I think we would want to do a resolution at the time we consider accepting the utility or infrastructure, and I think having the results of the camera for that resolution would make sense. Yeah. So we understand.
I just want to know that we've, dotted all of our i's and crossed our t's, and so then we don't have a surprise.
Trustee?
And in that resolution, I guess I would want to hear a recommendation of the date that we would accept that sewer line. I'm not sure if it should be the date of the resolution or if we should be going back to some date, or I'm just not clear on that and how that would affect the town. So I'd like to hear more about that.
Mayor
I think in terms of the sequence, it's just that we had previously stated that we wanted to see what was in the line. And it may be that it increases the responsibility because it may, depending on what's found in it. And it would be clear, it'd be good to be clear about what that is when we do it. Having said that, I don't know that that's any kind of a rejection or disagreement with this. It's just that we want to do steps along the way.
Yeah, I think it informs though the maintenance potentially. It could change the recommendation of what the maintenance component of this. I think I think we are probably at a point of doing those is proceeding with accepting the infrastructure. But the camera results may, I don't know if we want to put the schedule of maintenance in that resolution necessarily until we know what the condition of the line is. So maybe these are multi-step processes with budgeting and other CIP projects. So I mean, I think I'm hearing the board willing to accept the UAB's recommendation, and proceed on that with some additional information to help us.
Well, as possibly ask the staff, have we looked, do we know for sure there are no other issues like this in town? Because Trustee Browning brought that up Bill meetings ago. So would we want to add that if we run across this in the future, we'll bring it in like this one and not go through a year process? Because I can name a couple of laterals, I know a couple of them that exist. They go across multiple property lines. Don't have to be attached to a house, but a house attached to a lateral that then crosses property lines and comes down to the town.
You could potentially have a conflict of interest.
Yes, I did. I don't sit on title, so can't tell you what the actual property would actually do.
I think my
So I'm just
comfort level
saying,
would be to take them on a case-by-case basis. Would staff concur with that?
yes.
If attorneys say that this doesn't set that precedent,
Well, why don't we say that in the resolution? I mean, I can say whatever you want me to say, but, and I would have to check with code just to be sure but that's probably not a bad idea, is to set that forward, that is the will and intent and desire of the board.
But your suggestion was to say just take them all? And
Well, yeah, because I'm sure there might be more. Do we know?
That scares me.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're buying. Yeah.
That's not a good thing. But, you know, we can certainly start with some language and then modify it from there when we see the draft.
what about the comments made during public input, or any of those that you're wanting to build into this resolution?
I think that it's important to build some of those in there, especially some of the historical significance regarding that line where the town has maintained it always, and they've never charged back the homeowners. I think that's an important piece.
I think we have a lot of documentation that's been provided, so I think staff can kind of look through that and pull out the things they think are relevant to the
Yeah,
decision.
if staff can boil that down for me, because I haven't had a chance to review all of that, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I think the resolution should provide a lot of the background as to why we're doing this now and the issues have been. So, any further discussion? I think the staff have enough direction.
Sure.
All right, so we'll look for a resolution at a future meeting. All right, on to the housing update.
Good news. I do not have a lot to report in the last 2 weeks. However, Summit is continuing its due diligence on the Lions Valley Park Bell property. They are interested in potentially pursuing the Van Court parcel, and they are starting their due diligence on that property. And that, per conversation with the Division of Housing, it does appear that they are willing to consider, it's not been committed to yet, but are willing to consider what's considered a dual site project regarding, for the funding aspect of it, as a project in Lyons, and they will be confirming that in the near future unless they did it on your phone call last Thursday.
No, that phone call didn't have to sign.
Can you clarify then that is Mr. Van Court still interested then?
They are talking as private owner right now. We would not be in the middle of that agreement if it happened. That's good news. Unless we need to be, I mean, if it ends up, it may go that way, but as of right now, it's preliminary discussions as a direct purchase.
Can you clarify with who they're working directly? Summit?
Summit and Van
In
Court.
Thank you.
They would, it would be a more traditional project to the Division of Housing where a project is defined and then they apply for the funding and come to you and ask for your blessing on that to happen on that site. So that part would be more traditional than what we've been dealing with the flood recovery money.
Okay.
So that's, but really, nothing, specific, nothing confirmed at this point for any of those items, just still all in process.
You wanted to have a discussion about the.
Oh, the greens.
quarterly.
Just as a housing update, Paul is here and Richard. After their last presentation to you, there was somewhat of a, I don't know if I'd call it a request, or there was a discussion, is there any consideration of moving the public works site to the front of that property to allow for more housing units to be developed in the back of the property in a more, less commercial part of that site.
Yeah, so if you remember the site plan, they had two, one which developed the front of the site, and one which used the site more creatively, recognizing, as Richard and I did, that the back of the site is not the best place for the public works. That we could creatively possibly move the site and get more connectivity throughout that sub-area and potentially create more livability now and connectivity in the entire area, not just in that parcel. And so their site redesign looked at potentially moving it somewhere else on that parcel, either a small portion where the buildings were, or as they mentioned at that meeting, the whole design with the yard. And they wanted to know what their risk would, and the town risks would be associated with that. And so we've been working with Richard to identify what those would be. Whether that would mean jeopardizing all of our funding for that, and whether the Greens would want to take on some of that responsibility for the fiscal responsibility, the development responsibility. They don't know. They are just asking the questions to see if there are options, because the site design is so much better with regard to how that entire parcel itself works. So we're coming up with answers for them. The Greens has also been working with Marcus to develop the purchase and sale agreement. However, Marcus is gone right now, and they didn't realize he'd be gone, so they're kind of sending emails to nobody.
If I can interject, I mean, we've asked for direction to move forward. We have a draft presented to staff, and we're waiting for kind of the go-ahead. Cambarello has been following up with us to say, what can we do, and we just need direction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Marcus followed up before he left town.
So they are trying to understand the risk and what the risk is, and so they had some questions that they wanted us to work through flood recovery to see if FEMA could answer some of those questions. And I think our approach is that we are, well, I'll let you answer those if you want, that we're not willing to go directly to FEMA to ask those questions. So we don't have some of those answers. That we have what we can through the process that we've established, I think. Is that fair? I don't. Yeah, sure.
Well, I believe the question is, can we get approval from FEMA to move the site at this point? And we went to we had a face-to-face meeting with DHSN a couple of weeks ago. We don't talk directly to FEMA normally. We go through DHSN to FEMA. And so we went to DHSN and asked them the question, what do we have a proposal, we may want to request moving the site if we get that direction from the town or the board. Their answer was that there are no further versions, no further versions will be accepted for this project, and that we could submit a version for it, and it would not be reviewed until closeout on the project. So what that means is that if the town were wanting to move that site, then we wouldn't know until after the project was built and closed out whether it was accepted by FEMA or not. So there's in my opinion, a huge amount of risk to the town to take that approach.
And just to remind the board that that reimbursement is what's reimbursing the water fund for the acquisition of the property. And this was also part of our action plan from DHSCM early on, that we had not proceeded with this project. So we were actually put on notice, I think, several years ago, to make sure we get this project done and spend these funds on time. What, can you remind us what the, everybody knows the total dollar amount from FEMA for the project, their contribution?
Well, this project has 3 funders. It has FEMA, insurance, and CDPHE. And CDBG-DR, yes, summer. So it's a complex financial project. I think the total amount for the public works site, 2.5 million?
Altogether, there's 1.433 million coming from CDBG-DR funds.
Okay.
There was an initial estimate on the site work, the project we just bid out, of somewhere around 500,000. Some of the costs have escalated on that, and we know a lot more now. It's more like 800, could be almost $1 million. And then there's insurance funding of, I believe, up to 347,000. So we're somewhere in that 3.5, potentially $4 million project. There is a timetable on this also. We've already got an extension on the FEMA dollars till January, or excuse me, till December 31st of 19. The CDBG-DR funds also has a deadline, very similar deadline in September 19. And the insurance policy, we're already past the deadline of spending that money. They're working with us, they're not threatening us, they're saying we'll still supply the money, get what they want the project to move forward. So that to go back and do a different site, there's a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of support that's come into it. So it's a complex issue. Gee, and fathom that we would do that. Sure. In my mind.
I do have a question about the size. I mean, we're really increasing the size and the footprint of our public works facility. I mean,
On the current location.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, do we really need everything that we're building out there? I mean, that would be the only one thing I would wonder is could we, I mean, we're gonna build 2 buildings, really, correct?
Yes.
How does it compare to what we had before in terms
It's
of
actually
square
the
footage?
same, it's only like 0.3 of an acre larger than what we had. It's really the minimum threshold of what we said we needed. The other issue to consider here is if we would move to the front site, which I think in a long-range plan would be ideal, but there's a lot of risk, is where do we find more land to store the materials that's outside of the floodplain?
It's my understanding that they could find the materials on the same site. When they were here, they said that.
No way.
Yeah.
I don't know that they've looked at our plans close enough then, because that's half the site is storage of materials.
Yeah, I mean, they were proposing a pretty significant reduction, and I'm not sure we could get to that, but just knowing we're building 2 buildings, you know, we're currently operating at 1. If there was any possibility to do anything, that would be about, I have similar really grave concerns about starting over on this project, knowing how much we're limited in terms of what time we have. I really liked the second proposal so much more, and it really was an improvement, and I get it, but it's unfortunate we are where we are, but I don't know how we would fund this project, and I'm not sure how they would take on the risk of that funding should we not get reimbursed. I mean, if they're willing to do that, I suppose, but, it seems like a pretty heavy lift.
It seems like there are some things that we know, and there are some things that we might not know, and, about that risk, and they wanted to explore that risk a little more, and see if it's willing to take a risk. So that's what, they've been trying to discern over the last week or so. And so I think it's worth asking questions and seeing what that risk would be, and defining that a little more.
In the meantime, we're supposed to grade the site in the next 2 weeks.
Sure, but, well, that's readying the site, that will not go to waste. Anybody that takes on that site would do that work anyway, and hence
But
would
who
pay
will
for
pay
it.
for that?
Anybody that would take on the site.
These guys?
Sure, I mean, anybody would have to do that work to prepare the site. So overlap grading is something they would have to do.
Mayor Person, comment?
I remember not long, in my first term after the flood, we had a discussion about existential risk. $3.5 million is an existential risk for the town. In other words, we can't swallow it. We don't have the ability to swallow it. It would be devastating consequence of this stuff. So absent, at least from my perspective, absent a high confidence belief that the risk was minimal coming from staff, I couldn't vote for it, moving it.
I don't think we'll know that until we have a discussion with the Greens.
Let me say that a different way. Right now, you cannot give me that assurance.
No.
That's what I'm saying, yes.
Trustee Wall?
I would concur with the mayor and trustee Drystad. This is just too big of a risk for us to take. I honestly don't even feel like it's worth asking the questions and spending the time on it, because I don't see that you could come back with anything that would make me feel comfortable with it, with how much we've gone through to get where we are today. I also think they have a really amazing designer on their team, and he will figure it out. I think we'll see a third version with the facility where it's planned, so I'm not worried about how it's gonna come out in the end.
Mr. Carroll?
You mentioned we have to build the project, and on your notes, it indicated that staff report that it would probably be done in August, September. How long does it take for closeout for all those different
Projects?
months? Yeah.
Well, I mean.
3 months, 6 months, 12 months?
Oh, yeah.
After closeout, what happens?
Then it stays, then FEMA will have up to, I think it's 7 years to come in and review the projects and claw back by 10 years.
This FEMA closeout process can take 18 months or more.
And I like the idea, like the mayor said, and everyone else. I don't have a problem. I know staff was lucky when I first mentioned that we can split up storage of materials and facilities. So it's unfortunate that it cost us. The risk is, Pro Tem Drystad has indicated, is so great. But I just want to make a point that I want staff to understand that, say it was going to work and we had to split materials up, just kind of have to accept that, because the taxpayers of the city of Lyons, the town of Lyons, would benefit greatly from the tax increases out there. The Lura would also, even on that little bit over a 25-year period, is great. So the staff had to separate materials and better plan how they're going to do something weeks and months out. That's okay, because that's probably what the taxpayers are expecting. They expect the best bang for their buck. and moving material, moving something around for staff, from Warren to Apple Valley, we have land, a couple miles, you have a city the size of Denver that's moving materials around, and even smaller towns. Greater distances is not a negative for in future references. If we go somewhere, splitting things up, town staff maybe having to plan a little bit better with parks and where the materials are and where equipment is, that's okay. I would expect that from a board. She said I would expect that. I think the taxpayers would too. It's just unfortunate that dollar-wise it's one hell of a risk that I know we can't afford. If Greens is willing to pay for it, that's a whole different ballgame in my opinion.
Well, and to that point though, I mean, we don't have a purchase and sale agreement in place with these folks. I mean, and you know, every plan has been, every time we have a conversation with them, it's evolving, and I hope it starts to hone in on something really, we get closer to where it stops changing radically every time we get a proposal. You know, I think Trustee Waugh's point was a good one, that, I mean, they can come back and, once they know the conversation closed, then they can dedicate their time and energy to figuring out the best design for that plan. I mean, we are just too far down the road, we have too much risk, not at this point, in my opinion. So, Trustee Farrell, Trustee Miller, anything different to add?
I don't think I have anything different. I mean, I think that they will do an exceptional job coming up with something really great. But I don't see how it could be, at this point, changed.
Negotiated.
So, I think you're hearing kind of, we need to make sure our public works project stays on track and that we don't jeopardize the funding in some other way. Just, you know, exploring endless options, and I think we need to probably proceed with the schedule we're on. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, even if we could locate another piece, or they could, and we could swap. Just the FEMA approvals. I mean, they would have to be able to commit to the risk factor of the total project.
Yeah, I mean, outside of them saying, we will pay you $3.5–4 million, because everything is linked, it's not just one funding source. Everything else is leveraged off of FEMA, and then, you know, it goes down from there, and that's the only way, and we still don't have, we haven't gotten far enough even with the Greens, in my opinion, to get to that decision. We're gonna delay the project several months probably to even decide that, if they were willing to take the whole nugget, potentially. I mean, there's still a negotiation here that has to occur. And 2019, I mean, we are coming up on less than 18 months at this point to get the project done. So, I just don't see a path for it. That's just, I appreciate their creativity, but we need to work with the site, the way we've laid it out.
So unless they would purchase the site for the amount we have at risk, we move forward with our current one.
And quite honestly, I don't want them to spend $3.5 million doing that. I want them to put that money toward a great development. That's where that money should go. And this change, I mean, it's not a significant enough change in that number of housing units. If you could turn around and say, we'll get you another 40, we're talking less than 10 additional units. I think designers got crazy, and I think they had, you know, a good idea, but we are just not right. We're not in step with our timelines, and I think we should really communicate with them. This is where we are, and this is what is on the table. We have to kind of get them focused on what they have to work with. I think we've had enough discussion. I don't see the board moving in any different direction. So we'll move on to the next items that were immune from consent. So we'll just go in order 2, 3, and 4. So I pulled item number 2, which is about, I'm sorry? Oh, I did? I thought I pulled 2 and 3.
You pulled 2
2, 3, and 4.
Oh, you pulled 2, sorry, you beat me. I was.
Okay, sorry. Julie pulled 2.
No, but it's still under, okay. I'm like, all right,
Mine are easy questions. So this is the resolution approving a lease for the 2018 Mountain Sun 25th celebration. My first question is, the event being held at Planet Bluegrass?
Yep.
And what type of event is it? I didn't have any information on what it was.
So this is primarily a 2-day concert. There's a little bit of secrecy surrounding this event in the sense that the artists that are confirmed to play it, we're not allowed to announce until starting date in mid-July. Contractually, if we announce them, then.
Oh, I don't need to know.
So we can't say more about that, but so it'll be a concert with music Friday evening, and then starting Saturday late afternoon to Saturday evening.
Okay, and then in the agreement, I was glad to see that there's local access to Laverne Johnson Park, just like there is for the other festivals. And I guess I just want to clarify that the playground will have access by locals. Sometimes it's roped off or, okay. And they'll also have access to get to the river around the pass system. Okay. All right, so then I'm curious, because this is a new event, I believe, and and if you're taking over the whole park, were there any reservations for camping already through our reservation system?
Sure, so as you know, we switched to the online reservation system in September, and we got a heads up from the Planet that this festival might be coming down the pike. And at the time, they weren't entirely clear of if it was going to move forward and if they would want to lease the property. So we have the ability to block reservations as from the back end of the reservation system, and we did that. In fact, I sent Brian an email last week and said, can I get the dates for Rocky Grass 2019? Because reservations can be made 13 months in advance with this new system. So we had to go in and make sure we blocked that out. So staff went in, blacked out the dates, should we enter a lease agreement so that we don't have to cancel any. So currently, there are none. We're getting a few phone calls asking, but until we have a signed lease, we can't.
We'll open it up tonight if need be, and they'll be filled.
Yeah, all right, and then my last question, I don't recall the potential date for Power Man, but I feel like it's that same weekend.
October.
It's in October. Shoulder. Oh, okay, I was thinking it was September. Okay, those are all the questions I had for number 2.
So I had a question about, I was unclear about the camping compensation. Because it says in the first part, camping payment which shall be greater than $3,000 or 50% of the total gross revenues generated from the total number of campers under the terms up to a maximum of 12,000. Then the second half of that says, if they obtain additional revenue from more than 200 campers, the camping payment shall be determined by multiplying the number of campers, bless you, by the fee charged per camper divided by 2. So.
Sure, and.
I'm just maybe not following exactly what you're saying. Is it 12,000 capped, or is it
No, actually, so there's actually 2 different amounts, and it kind of goes back to, I want to say, there's a number in there, 2C, where there's a minimum of 200 campers and a maximum of 800 campers, no less than 118 parking and 15 recreational vehicle hookups. So what we've done is, and this was new for 2018 for both Rocky Grass and Folks as well, is because the farm had been approved and kind of came into play, but nobody understood at the time when we were working on these leases is how that would work in terms of would we lease Laverne Johnson Park and then they wouldn't sell tickets to it, you know, so protecting the town's interest, I think, is where it came up from the attorneys. So we worked on the last two agreements to have a minimum number of campers, and then 800 is the maximum really that you can put in there. So I think from the town's perspective, we would like 800. I think even from the planet's perspective, they would like 800 just from all the costs that they incur, so they also get 50% of that. But so the minimum camping wise would be 3,000 from camping, plus the parking, which would be $2,360, plus the RVs, which would be $600. So the minimum for the weekend total would be $5,960. The maximum would be that 12,000 plus the 600 plus the 2,360. But bear in mind that we also, when the Planet Bluegrass Festival takes over, town does not staff cleaning, supplies for cleaning, trash, any of that. That all is also part of the agreement as well. So does that?
I think so. I'm just a little bit confused by the cap in there, in how that ties to, and I went back and tried to look at the old agreements, and they didn't seem to read exactly the same way, and I may not have had them final, because I know we changed them too. So I couldn't really tell from my old records what we landed on, but, so it seems to me like what we really wanted was some sort of minimum that covered anything we would easily probably have a full campground for what we typically rent, for camping. What is the revenue we would typically have on a Saturday?
Sure, so if we were at 100% occupancy, and that's with RV and tent camping, that's about $2,050 just for camping for 2 nights in tent and RV. Parking is a little more challenging to really nail. For one, residents get to park for free if they have a resident pass. Enforcement is still a challenge. It certainly is getting stronger, but so if there's 118 spots, I don't know that we would get $1,180 each day. That would be 100%. So like in my kind of best case scenarios, if 100% parking and camping, it's about $4,000 the town would receive. 80%, which might be, more budgetarily reasonable, would be about $3,200. And if we were at 60%, it would be about $2,400. And also, weather takes into that. If it's a nice, now with the camping, people pay for the camping regardless of if they're coming or not. So if we get a rainy weekend, they would still come. But parking, if we had rain, we wouldn't make any on parking, but if we leased it, we still would, because I'm guessing we still come to
Well, I guess my question is would it work just to get rid of everything after the first, where it says campers? Because, basically, similar, I'm in 7A. So basically, we would be getting the greater of $3,000 or 50% of the total gross revenues for camping. Do we really need the language that says up to a maximum of 12,000 and then all the other stuff? Because it seems like it goes to that anyway, right? Am I reading that correctly? So it seems like you could really just end the sentence after total number of campers. Because that, if 3,000, I just want to say, is that enough to kind of cover what the town would have gotten anyway? 4,000. So at a minimum,
camping.
Just for camping, right. And then I'm okay with the others the way they are. It's just, this one had a cap of the 12,000, which I didn't do the math.
Well, that's only, sure, that's the 800 times 30 would be 24,000, and then we get half of that. So that's the, and
it just added complex.
I don't disagree
with
you on that. If we can simplify it, if lopping it off right after the bold campers gets to the bottom line, I have no problem with that.
Yeah. That way, if there's no question what the formula is. So that was
sure, that's fine.
kind of my main. If it's kind of same. It's just, it implied the second half. There was like some second formula, which maybe gets you back to the same place. But My other question, and I think you kind of covered it earlier, was whether, so the plan is to do parking at the farm as part of the parking
Yes,
plan
yeah,
for this.
yeah.
You know, I do think we have to be cautious of fatigue, of taking it apart. And, I mean, I think, you know, you don't do a third festival very often, so I think people get it that it's a once in a while thing. But we have new areas being impacted, so it's out of the gate, kind of, you know, we'll see how people react to all of that. But the other question I had was just, so I do think the board should be aware that there was a recent issuing of the cease and desist letter for the work done on the Plant Bluegrass property in the floodway. Is there an update on the status of that?
Are you talking on the Planet Bluegrass or under the CDOT bridge?
Well, it's CDOT's bridge, but it's still their property. The property line goes all the way to the road.
It's actually us, we own that.
Okay, well, it's still work that was being done by them on property that, you know, was basically had to be stopped. So is there an update on how this was?
There was a stop work order issued until a floodplain development permit was approved. And Planet Bluegrass was to submit a floodplain development permit. I don't believe we received
No,
one
we
yet.
have not received one.
So are you planning, what is the work being done?
So the issue here is that there was a cattle crossing under the bridge. It was historically there, and it was there until CDOT did the work on the bridge earlier this winter. And we were talking to them while they were doing the work, and they actually even left the dirt and the rocks to put the cattle crossing back. They left it on our property and said, here it is, we'll leave it for you guys, you can put it back in once we're done with our approvals from CDOT. So they got their approvals, and we did what we were told, and what we've been asking for, which is just to put back the cattle crossing. And
CDOT denied, well,
CDOT
CDOT
then,
contacted FEMA, and FEMA contacted us.
Yep. And their response was, though in fact we were really told that, we were told that by contractors. Subcontractors who apparently do not have authority, though it's unclear who does have authority there. And so we plan to fight that. I mean, we certainly want to at least get a definitive answer of what's going on, because that cattle crossing had historically been there for a long time. It's in the deed, and yeah. So there's some uncertainty of what's going on there, and you know, I think we believe that CDOT just doesn't quite understand the history there, and that we should be allowed to put it back. So that's the issue.
Okay.
And certainly, like, out of good faith, I mean, we thought that they left the rocks on the dirt and said, put it back. And
So
we did
wasn't
that.
any work being done to create pedestrian access from that part of your plan for moving people from the
We
parking
haven't
to
gotten to that point. At this point, we just
okay.
wanted to get the property back to where it was before CDOT did the work on the garage.
Okay.
We just wanted to be able to drive our tractors across the cattle crossing.
Okay. So what is the plan for transporting the pedestrians who park at the farm to these festivals?
Well, at this point, the plan is going to be to, maybe Sean should comment better on that.
So the plan that we spelled out in our major event thing is going to be exactly identical to the Rocky Mountain Folks Festival and Rocky Grass. We're going to have a crosswalk and take people along the sidewalk on the, I believe it's the north side of the highway, down to the main gate. And we're going to follow the same security procedures we have in every year past and make changes if necessary. Yeah, there's no plan to bring anybody in the back entrance. We want to continue to bring people through the front. That's the pedestrian walk path, so across the highway, down the sidewalk, in the front.
And where are they gonna cross the highway?
The highway on the west side of the entrance, so we'll stop traffic for a moment, let left turn lane cars turn into the property while we bring a wave of pedestrians across the highway, down the sidewalk, open up traffic again, and then do it in waves.
So they're crossing at the road or up further at the entrance to
They're
the
crossing
farm?
at the entrance to the farm, and that way we can let incoming traffic and pedestrians cross at the same time, and we're gonna staff it with flaggers, and there will be sheriff's deputies there at the same time.
Okay,
Go ahead.
piggyback on that one?
Yeah.
So will you be also doing it down by River Bend as well?
Existing crosswalks from our other
So
festivals.
traffic may, but you're gonna try to coordinate. that,
Coordinate,
so-
yep, there will be
Okay.
coordination between the traffic.
So they aren't
stops,
backed
yeah.
up there and then go a quarter mile and get back up?
Their sheriffs will be at each spot, and we'll be communicating through festival radios and shit.
Okay, well, that helps clarify a couple things. I think, yeah, I think it's just good, we should know, I mean, because we had a lot of discussion about that pedestrian access kind of, and we really haven't seen kind of what your plan is for that, so.
I believe I drew up a map on as an exhibit on my major event plan, so if you'd like, I can, it's not bring it to you.
That has to go through the board, but.
It doesn't usually, but I think because we're approving a third event and we really don't know, haven't seen how this property is gonna interact yet.
Joe has seen it.
Okay, so,
And then as part of the agreement to section 5, A, B, and C all talk about the police coverage and the requirements in terms of when Planet Bluegrass needs to get Boulder County Sheriff their requirements for extra sheriff presence, and then that's the piece too where it's in there in section 5 that we pay for that, but then we bill the Planet for those costs for having this extra staff.
yeah, I just kind of wish we had 1 year of some experience with how the new flow is gonna work. But I guess you'll get lots of practice to figure it out, right? Make adjustments. Okay, I think those are all my questions for this, Mayor Pro Tem.
I have one question. I believe that there's a reference to cordoning off the sidewalk from the crosswalk over to the entrance, right?
That's
Will that be, and it said 10 feet wide, I was trying to envision how you could do that. Does that encroach on the bicycle lane, or does it just go to the curb?
It just goes to the curb. So we were not allowed to do any sort of barricading, so it's just cones along the sidewalk. So bicycle traffic should be able to act normally. They will get stopped, just like traffic does at the crosswalk. But bikes and any other traffic should be able to operate normally.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, Trustee Fair?
So I just wanted to verify, something, so there's gonna be parking, so we have camping at Laverne Johnson Park. There's gonna be parking at the farm, in addition to parking at the utilities? Wastewater?
Only
Possibly.
Yeah, so that's the next item, but it's
Oh,
really,
that's a different thing.
which is fine, but, you know,
I'm
the
getting
key is
confused.
really that's overflow parking, so
That's what we'd be considering overflow.
yeah, so we're hoping not to have to use that, we can talk about it in the next item, but that's the.
I got those two lost, okay.
All right, is there a motion for resolution 2018-47?
I'll move we approve resolution.
I'm sorry, 40.
42.
48.
48. I move we approve resolution 2018-48.
I'll second.
With the one change we discussed in striking
Oh, yeah.
and 7A of the
With
lease
the
text.
change to 7A and the lease, striking all the language after the bolded sentence.
There's just an amendment. All right. Any further discussion? No? We look forward to seeing who you have on the lineup. The suspense, I'm sure, becomes. Yes, thank you. All right, call for the vote. Thank you. All right, passes 6-0. So, did I pull 3?
You pulled 3.
Yes,
Julie pulls all you.
All right, you've answered a couple of the questions I had already. How many cars can you fit on that site? I'm just curious.
That's a fabulous question, because we had outdoor games this weekend, and I called Ryan today, and he was on a mountain bike ride and answered my call, but didn't have the information with him. He said he would have it tomorrow from the parking people, but I went down during outdoor games and talked to the parking folks, because I knew this was on the agenda, and in our heads, we have a 200 number.
That's including the back though.
No, that's just the front, we call it the front 9 or the back 9.
Yeah.
So the back is where their cycling center would go. And so when I went down there and talk to the parking people, and keep in mind that, that's not really my expertise is parking. But the guy was very helpful, and he said, you could fit a lot more cars in there. He said, here's what I would suggest, because the field was just open. It wasn't graded very well. It was still kind of bumpy and wood chippy from cleanup days and just staff getting it ready. But he said if we put ropes in there and chalked off the sites, so a car pulls in here, 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 he thought you could get, if you use the back section as well, possibly 400 cars in there. That's what the parking company, I think they're called Great Events, I have his card. And so, honestly, then I thought to myself, well, if we do this with the Planet, maybe that's really worth the investment for town to have this person come out and kind of go through the process of how we could really maximize that for all of our future events as well. So, did that help?
Yeah, I think that was my question. I mean, so the agreement for this is just a flat $1,000 for the,
yeah, and I think Brian has a better sense of explaining why they charge so little.
Which is more than the town has received in the past. Yeah, we try to keep the parking prices cheap, just to encourage people to actually use these parking lots versus parking in neighborhoods. So historically, and we've kept this price for a long time, is $2 per day or $5 for the 3 days. And so we figured, we just kind of got that number from 200 times 5 is $1,000. In the past, we would have split that 50-50, but we're fine with just paying the $1,000 flat to the town for these.
and that you're expecting this to be just overflow?
Well, yes, we're referring really as overflow. I mean, we're hoping not to use it at all, really, but we're just trying to put plans in place, knowing this is the first year for the farm property. And want to make sure we have the backup plan for it.
Will you be shuttling people if you end up using it?
If we end up using it, then we'll change the shuttle route to go down.
Okay. I mean, I think you make a good point, and I think it's important. I mean, the only complaint we ever really get about the festival is people parking in the parking lots. Are you gonna charge more for the farm parking?
They'll be the same.
They'll be the same. Okay, I didn't have any, it's just, I was curious how it went with the outdoor games using that, 'cause this is the first time we've really used it for parking. And so I was just curious, like, what the capacity is there, what, were there any issues with it?
Yeah, and these guys can attest to it too, and that came up with outdoor games, is when you have parking staff there, as people leave, they were able to fill people coming in. And so actually, we were a little nervous with outdoor games and what the impact was going to be. And as Sergeant Chris said, and then as staff found out, we really had very minor complaints. We even, we blocked off the Mormon church as well so that folks would not park in there. But, when Trail Run Relay finished up, they would leave, and then people who were coming in for the burning can could fill in. And so the parking staff was there full time, so they were able to, as a car left, be like, oh, there's a spot over on the left, second row back, or there's a spot. So that, I think, helps the revenue piece.
If the town waived the 1,000, would you make it free parking?
If I can clarify why we're actually renting it, because our goal is to be able to take all the traffic parking out of town so that the residents don't have to deal with parking. So this is only because we want to have a backup, because like you said, you wish you had a little bit more time to kind of see how things work. We're not gonna have event parking signs like we used to that sent people to Bone Park. I think that was a little bit of an issue where people would drive to Bone Park and they have to drive through a neighborhood and they'd see a spot that's free. So all of our event parking signs are gonna direct them to the farm. And if we run into issues, and we're gonna divide up into 3-day parking as best we can, if we run into issues where we think we're gonna hit some sort of capacity, which we don't think we were, this is just kind of a fallback plan, then we will send them back into town and park that way. And there will be signs, and we'll hand them actually a physical pamphlet that says, here's the overflow parking, follow this map. But we weren't planning on sending people to that as their first.
Yeah, I get that. I just wonder if you get to that point, if it's a greater incentive for them not to then choose the side streets to find a free spot. You would think $2 to $5 wouldn't deter people, but I don't know if the town has any expense related to this being offered for parking.
Well, if it ends up raining, we'll be regrading Second Avenue. We always do after a rain. Well, and that's about, that supports a $3,000.
And I think it would be great if the town could get, you know, somebody who's an expertise in this and explain kind of better of how you could really, whether it's diagonal this way and that way, and
So we could use it for that.
We do have a design for that
Okay.
in the parks plan, so that exists by an expert.
There's also, because it's 3 agreements and we drafted it as one, a cancellation, so I think to the planet's thoughts is if they don't think they are gonna need it for boats or for Mountain Sun, then they could cancel it within 10 days. And I guess that's based on what you're seeing ticket sales wise and history.
Well, and that's kind of what I was thinking, if it's overflow parking and you're not planning on paying $1,000 for something you're gonna end up really needing or using. If it's free, then it's a good incentive for people to use it and stay off the streets. So, just something to consider. I have the board rest of the room for that, but, I mean, I have no problem with the, option to provide extra parking. I think the more we keep them off the streets, the happier people will be. So if that's the goal, I think that's a good one. All right, those are my comments. Thanks. Anybody else? Is there, Trustee Farrell?
Well, I guess just following up on what you were saying, as I think about it, that could go a long ways to, keeping citizens happy, especially in the neighborhood area. That if it was a free parking option available, and it would keep people perhaps out of their own neighborhood streets, that would probably be a very positive thing.
All right, is there a motion for, get the number right this time, resolution 2018-47?
All right, I'll make a motion. I move to approve resolution 2018-47, and maybe you can help me out, with a waiver of the $1,000 fee for the lot, granted that Planet Bluegrass does not charge for parking in that lot. I'm not exactly sure where that is.
I think we would have to amend the agreement slightly, but that's the intent.
You would, yeah.
Do the.
If the resolution so passes, that would be.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, so I apologize for being slow-minded about this, but I'm trying to figure out what happens then with the front parking lot. And is that, do people still have to pay $5 to park in there? Yeah, just a few little, other people coming who are not going to Planet Bluegrass, if it's free, is it free for them, is it? And not to change what we're doing, it's just that somebody has to figure that out.
I think it would be signed, hopefully, to be Planet Bluegrass parking. I mean, the intent isn't to just allow anyone to use the parking lot.
And what would your restrictions be? Because my plan was to keep it closed and only use it if necessary. And if I open it as free, I guess what are our restrictions on who gets to park there?
And you have to staff it.
So yeah, we would be staffing it when it's open and close it when it's not.
You can use it however
So
you
it's
want
free
to.
parking
Yeah,
for
it's free
our
if
festive
you end
variants.
up using it.
And I'm not saying we will turn away people who are in town for other things, but obviously a concern is to try and limit my event's impact into the places we're renting. So so if someone's in town for something else and we don't have capacity to deal with something else, what are our
My
obligations?
expectation is it's still exclusively
Okay.
your parking.
Okay.
It's just that we're willing to say, we're gonna charge you for using the lot, if as long as you don't charge the users yourself.
Okay.
I think it would go a long way to, I think the town is busier between festivals than it used to be when the festivals started. You're gonna read in a lot in my column about the impacts of tourism and how we're balancing that in the next Festival review. I think we're just feeling that we need to be sensitive to the fact that people there's a lot more visitors in town, and that's a good thing, really. I mean, it's a great thing when people come to the festivals, but it's kind of a higher level of busy all the time, and then the festivals are even a higher level of busy. And so we used to get kind of a breather, more or less, between festivals, and I don't think you get that as much. And that's good for our business community, but it can wear on the people who live here and want to see maybe, and the season feels like it's longer too. The winters are shorter, so it starts earlier and it goes longer. I'm just trying to be sensitive to that, and I think that, we're spreading things out too a little differently, and it may help actually to do that. But we don't know yet how this is all gonna kind of feel when it gets said and done. So I think the small things like this, I hope that comes over as something generous from the town to offer and say, yeah, use it, let's get some experience with it, we'll recalibrate next year. We find there's costs that we end up having, but there's a benefit also to spreading people out, I think, around town. And if some people just choose, and know you have an option that they don't pay anything, maybe they don't mind the walk through the park, which is really open and beautiful, so.
And I can work with the town to try and experiment some different plans and designs to see what works well if we want to use this as a trial period.
Sure.
And then we would probably grade it better, maybe?
Not my call.
Okay.
I would like to get the drainage working better, but
All right, so there's a motion and I believe there's a second, correct? Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. It passes 6 to 0. All right, thank you very much. Thanks for hanging in there with us. It's a long night. We're not done. All right. I'm gonna ask the board if we're going to trustee reports tonight.
Item 4.
I'm sorry.
I'll be quick.
I got mine done.
All right, item number 4 is the USDA grant money. I'm still not clear, are there restrictions on how you can use the funds of the grant, how a business can use those funds?
I'm sure there are some. We are submitting it on Wednesday. We just have to.
Well, let me start with my second question. So I know you had to have letter of intent from some businesses that they would actually use a loan in order to submit the application. Did you get those letters of intent?
They're supposed to be sent to Tiffany, and she's been out all week, and she'll be back tomorrow.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess I have to go back to the first question because, and what's the date that you have to submit again? It said mid-June, I think, in the packet, but I thought that was this week.
Actually, how it worked out is this grant was due in January 2018. And then they had April 2018. And then we received a phone call that said that the state had money in USDA rural development that they did not want to send back, which I took to mean as they wanted to use it or they would lose it. So they pretty much said to us, please apply for this money. In fact, on I think Friday or Thursday, they said actually we now have 35,000 instead of 25. So we feel like it's in our best interest to apply for it. We're getting a letter from the chamber. I'll have to find out from Tiffany if there's some businesses. The letters in the past have been very not super verbose. We have a letter from our attorney that we're good at managing grants, and so it would add that 35,000 to the pool of money that we currently are loaning out as a revolving loan. So it could be anything from, if somebody wanted to say improve their porch or their back deck, or make some, I don't know, maybe it's other things that you can do structurally or for helping to grow your business. What's that side stream for our VOD, those type of things. And it's no match and then still revolving loans. So we get to set the terms still.
And if I could clarify, the letter we submitted really is not about the town skill managing grant, although I'm sure the town is successful. I'm not qualified to opine on that. So the opinion letter we submitted is in support of the application, but merely that the town is corporately organized appropriately under state law. And so it's required, I think, as part of the application. And you have in the past, obviously, it's great for clarity on the record.
Yeah, I guess I'm unclear why we wouldn't want to apply.
I do want to apply, I'm not questioning that at
Okay.
all. But I've been asked to apply in the past. And then I've come and said, because of the same situation where we were gonna lose the money if there weren't businesses applying. So I was pulling my teeth trying to come up with, okay, well, I could take a loan for this. And then I kept getting from the committee, well, no, you can't use it for that. So then in the end, I had to say, well, I can't take a loan then. So I'm just trying to clarify, what can you use it for so that I can recruit businesses to get a letter into your packet? And I think Tiffany and I are still unclear as to
Sure, and I can,
what they can use it for. So I don't want to get denied is what I'm after here. Like if we submit letters of intent for,
right.
well, I need the money to pay back a loan.
No.
You know, so
It really
that's
is
where the
for-
businesses need to know what can they use it for. if
Sure,
they
it's
can't
for
submit a letter.
improvements that will help you to grow your employee base. So for example,
Okay.
if you added another amenity at your restaurant, like a porch, where now you could serve, you know, another 40% customers, because in the summertime you have a porch, and so then you might need 2 more waitresses and another bus
Okay.
person. That would be increasing your number of
Okay.
employees.
That's what I was looking for. is
Sorry.
Specifically to.
Sure.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, because sometimes like I'm so in there, I'm not thinking.
Yeah,
where you are.
no problem. Okay, so that's what I was looking for, so that I can try and get a couple of businesses to give Tiffany some letters.
Like, I'm not sure, I think the Stone Cup is expanding, I'm not entirely sure in the back there. So that might be a perfect example where if they're gonna, you know, start serving breakfast or meals longer, and then they would have more staff to serve them meals.
What are new startup businesses qualify? Like the butter place, and then maybe the guy might be building a building.
Second story.
Second stories, yeah.
I think it would be.
Can we get clarification? Okay.
Yeah, it'd be great to inform these people we know are investing now, that they need some additional funds, that, you know, we get into these things and everything's always more complicated and expensive than you think. So just letting them know there's this source of funding out there would be great. And just for the record, this granting process all happens from the staff. It's not this body who decides who gets this money. So I feel like I could vote on this. I know it's been brought up that it could go toward improvements at the distillery. I have no idea if they have any interest or going to apply or if it would even qualify. So, but I wouldn't be awarding that money regardless if they did. So.
You could get a puddle style car wash.
I think we already have one. I would go for the non-puddle.
It does say on the website, emerging businesses.
But yeah, so anyway, I just want to say I don't feel like I need to recuse myself. I don't have any role in assigning the funds, but we're just making them eligible to use.
Yeah, and actually it's a committee that's that.
Yeah, so anyway. Are you
Ditto the mayor with my interest in Casa.
Are your questions?
My questions have been answered.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion. I move to approve resolution 2018-49.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All right, and passes 6-0.
Thank you.
All right, unless there's anything burning that you need to mention for trustee reports, if you want to send anything in for the record, you can email it to Deb tomorrow, like early. All right. Are there any action items you wanted to summarize?
I've got some document revisions to make.
Yeah.
Revisions to.
Several. Follow up on the Dr. Bob agreements. transfer the Martin parcel, contacting CMEX, see if there's any interest in working with us if that moves forward. Referring the zoning code modifications to the PCDC. Some kind of, what's the next steps on the GIS? Agreement with the Ecology Board. Follow up with Laverne on paving of the museum driveway. And then the new language for the Upper Fifth agreement. Assistance to the LAH, see if they need it to the chamber for the marketing and promotions grant. Anything else then?
May I make an announcement about CMEX? Because I was sitting back here, but we did meet with CMEX. They are sponsoring Good Old Days, and the new plant manager did come in. His name is Olaf. He's from the Ukraine. And then Sally, who's kind of their administrative operations everybody. So they both came in and met with us about many of our events and how they could get involved.
Did the skating part come up?
It came up. They have cement, but apparently we need concrete. And so
Yeah,
they
there is a
don't,
difference.
they don't have a way, because how you get aggregate. And so I think that's kind of the sticky wicket in terms of they're not a cement, I mean, they're not a concrete factory, and so they don't have concrete trucks. They make the cement. And so we kind of joked with them like, oh, so, you know, but they talked about other ways they could sponsor events, and so they've come in.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Let's see, finish the, are there any other events? Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that we see the camera report on the upper fifth of the sewage line.
It's gonna be a video.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Well, wait till you see it, it's not really pretty.
I'll make sure I eat beforehand.
We're never gonna know the trustee. Okay. All right, anything else? All right, is there a motion to move into executive session?
I move to go into executive session pursuant to CRS sections 24.6.401.4E and 24.6.402.4B for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators, and for receiving legal advice from attorneys representing the town on specific legal questions, and specifically determining negotiating positions and strategies regarding the town's energy cost savings contract with Honeywell International Incorporated for the new wastewater treatment plant, and obtaining advice as needed from legal counsel on related legal issues. I further move to reconvene the board meeting at the conclusion of the executive session for the purpose of taking any actions deemed necessary, and to resume the June 4th, 2018 regular Board of Trustees meeting. And pursuant to CRS section 24.6.402.4E, for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators, and specifically determining negotiation positions and strategies, and instructing negotiators regarding the selection and appointment of a town attorney.
Hang on, sorry to interrupt, but we're gonna do two separate sessions. We're gonna read into one and out.
Oh, that was my fault. We can't just read them both and then have.
I guess you,
in the record
oh, okay,
that
I didn't
somebody
realize
just left.
that switch had been made. You're
I'm
just gonna
sorry.
have to make sure that the record reflects who was present
Yeah.
in the meeting, and that's
Yeah.
going to be different, so, okay, my apologies.
Sorry,
Continue.
Regarding the selection and appointment of a town attorney in the terms of any related professional services agreement. I further move to, and so reconvening the board meeting at the conclusion of the executive session actually will be after both of these. topics, and to resume the June 4th, 2018 regular Board of Trustees meeting.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so,
Now, yes.
we can